Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 16th, 2013 Town Council Workshop. We begin, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will entertain a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public we had prior to this meeting.
Motion to seal non-public minutes from the meeting prior to this.
Second.
Discussion?
Should we have the date on that, or is it necessary to?
Since it was legal, it's until such time as the cases are.
Seeing no other discussion, Mr. Administrator, the vote.
Counsel Wright?
Aye.
Counsel Levy?
Aye.
Counsel Branch?
Aye.
Counsel Zink?
Aye.
Counsel Carmichael?
Aye.
Counsel Bentley?
Aye.
Counsel Zaro?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0 to seal. Next item on the agenda is a public forum for non-agenda items only. We'll open the public forum at 7:09. Anyone want to speak? Seeing how no one wants to speak, we will close the public agenda, or the public forum at 7:09. Next item on the agenda, Town Council, excuse me, to consider acceptance of minutes. We have 3 sessions. Councilor Branch.
Motion to accept the December 19th, 2012 workshop minutes as written.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Administrator, the vote.
Counsel Wright?
Aye.
Counsel Levy?
Aye.
Counsel Branch?
Aye.
Counsel Zink?
Aye.
Counsel Carmichael?
Aye.
Counsel Bentley?
Aye.
Counsel-
I'm sorry, I abstained. I was absent. I was ill that night.
Counsel Zaro?
Aye. Motion passes 6-0 with 1
All
abstention.
the time.
Next item is our January 2nd business meeting.
Motion to accept January 2nd, 2013 business meeting notes as written.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? My only item of discussion is, since Vice Chair Bentley was left after the 4th item on the agenda, should he still vote on the acceptance of the minutes since he was not there for the entire meeting? Or is he an abstention?
No, you can vote for, anybody can vote for the minutes, no matter if they were there or not, if they believe it's a true reflection of what happened at the meeting.
All right, as long as you think we're true. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Administrator, the vote.
Counsel Wright?
Aye.
Counsel Levy?
Aye.
Counsel Branch?
Aye.
Counsel Zink?
Aye.
Counsel Carmichael?
Aye.
Counsel Bentley?
Abstain.
Counsel Zaro?
Aye. Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention.
Because I was missing half of it and I haven't run them all.
Last item is last set of minutes is the January 2nd non-public, which everyone should have received in their boxes.
I just realized before any motion's made that I don't think it's a big deal, and I should have seen it before, but there's a couple sentences I think need to be changed, so,
In the
non-public.
non-public?
Yes, I'm just, instead of someone making a motion, then me saying this, and then we can't do it anyway.
You want to change a couple things?
Yes.
Okay, so we will have a pulled up for non-public to discuss those. Next item on the agenda is department reports. Mr. Administrator.
You have the department reports. There, just a few highlights if you want from my report. Operating budget, we're halfway through the year. We're right on schedule with expenditures of 50% of the total operating budget. We're running slightly below with the general fund with 47% expended. And all other funds are around about the same numbers. Water is significantly over budget at this point in time, but this is due to one-time transfer to capital reserve funds. So while it looks like it's over, it's on schedule because we won't be doing that throughout the year. The revenues are actually running slightly below, with 55% of the revenues be collected for the remainder of the fiscal year. We have just, the reason is we haven't received some revenues from the state that we normally receive after the beginning of the year. Just some information on the town electronic newsletter. I don't know if the council is all subscribed, but we do have a new town electronic newsletter that's going on a weekly basis that has town information. We began on the 29th of December. At that time, we had 392 subscribers to the newsletter. Of those, 14 were inactive email addresses. I'm sorry, it was 391. And at that point, on the first day, 61% of them read the email, when 46 people, what they call clicks through to other links in that newsletter. We had a breaking news email that Saturday with a water main break at 9 o'clock at night, and 57% of the people read that email. and we added 1 subscriber after that. We actually lost 4 subscribers in the meantime, so we're actually reaching 389. However, last one, only 47% of the subscribers opened their email. I was kind of concerned, that sounded awfully low, but our provider actually shows us the comparison for governmental entities, and we're actually running higher than most people for governmental entities for opening in newsletters. But we still are encouraging people to subscribe, and I think last week it was closer to the 61% again. We've also established our town Facebook page, which has 103 followers, and we have 63 followers on Twitter. And our email newsletter is linked to these accounts, so whenever we send an email, it automatically posts to those accounts, so it's all connected. Just from money saving items, we're going to try to make it easier for the residents and save some money with the town report this year. And the town and the school district are planning on producing 1 annual report for the community. Hopefully it'll save on printing costs, and we'll be charging the schools their share of the printing costs. And it'll just be a number of pages in the document itself. We happy to report that the case brought against the town attorney Spector and the town planner by Mr. Cheney was dismissed by the court. And the court found the facts that even when viewed in the light most favorable to the plaintiffs, did not support the plaintiffs' causes of actions against the defendants of slander for title. Just to let everybody know that Mr. Cheney could appeal this decision to a higher court. Just an update on some financial policies and ordinances. Since I've been here, I've been reviewing our current ordinances and policies to make sure they're updated and comply with current law. I'll be submitting to the council for the consideration adoption of a new purchasing code to be included with the town ordinances. Currently, we have a purchasing policy, but by charter, this needs to be part of our ordinances. It also outlines the procedures for seeking proposals, amounts that need to have bonding of contractors, and limits on the amounts that department heads, the town administrator, or the council would need to approve before we can make a purchase. Currently, it stops at the town administrator, and there's no limit on the town administrators. If it's budgeted, the town administrator can sign the purchase order. There should be some limit on what the town administrator signs. It's common practice, and it should come to the council. The second will be the update on the town's investment policy. In accordance with town charter and state law, we need to adopt an investment policy outlines the prudent framework in which the treasurer, finance director, and town can invest the public funds. The finance director and treasurer are currently reviewing the policy, and we should have it to the council shortly. And just on, we always hear negative things normally, and rarely the positive. I do have 2 positive press pieces this past week. First, there was a nice letter to the editor praising Terry Littlefield and the assessing department and Scott Marsh, our new assessors, for the great customer service that an individual received. And the second was an article in the Boston Globe Travels section highlighting Newmarket as a day trip destination for residents of Boston and Massachusetts. And you both have copies of those reports. And you also have all the other departments' reports.
Any questions on any of the department reports for the town administrator? The buttons aren't working. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councilor Levy.
Not so much a question, just a couple of quick comments. They were very good. You know, I think we haven't had, excuse me, this much information with respect to the departments since I've been on the council. The police, I just had to say that I had no idea the amount of things that they are dealing with. I don't want to make it sound like there's a greater amount of break-ins and whatnot, but the things that they are doing, I think we should be very thankful for, and what their good work. Their budget is also looks like it's around 5% lower at this point than it would have otherwise been, just as a side note. And the same sort of applies from what I saw from the fire and rescue department too. You know, I think getting this information, if people want to see it, it would be worth seeing just how many calls they respond to and the types of things they do. I thought it was very good, so that's my comment.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Carmichael.
Yes, the town administrator has to do with the Department of Public Works. Bestway contract was up December 31st, 2012.
Yep.
And we're continuing with them month to month.
Yes, we are. It's
Do we waiting for bids, or what?
No,
why
what
are
we're
we
doing,
waiting?
we've got to meet with one that we believe is the, since it's a three-community contract, we're going to be meeting with the one we believe is the best to bring forward to each of our boards to make sure, we just want to make sure before we bring it forward, we're all on the same page and we understand what's in there. And we're going to be meeting with him shortly to come forward to the council with a proposal.
And how long is the contract? 2, 3 years?
It would be 3 years.
3 years? Okay. Okay, one more? Well, I'm hot here. On the sewage system, Sean stated we have a 6,000-gallon underground fuel tank at the wastewater facility. How do we, I guess my question is, how do we bid for the fuel? And is that gas or oil or?
My understanding, that one is propane. I'll have to double check. I wasn't here for the bids last year. My recommendation is we advertise usually in the late spring before hurricane season for oil and and other fuels to get the best price. I would probably also discuss it with the school department to try to go in with them to have a bigger pool to do so. I'm not sure what they did in the past, but that would be my recommendation. I'd be doing that and bringing it forward to the council.
And you get involved with this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you, that's it.
We'd do it as a whole town bid.
Other questions, comments? Vice Chair Bentley, go ahead.
Just in the spirit of all the love tonight, I just want to reiterate what Council Levy had said. In addition to reading the report, I also, a couple weeks back, Chief Sear had given us the report of other area police departments and the cost per call, and we were one of the lowest cost per call, and just think, I hope everyone realizes how blessed we are to have, good leadership at the helm and always watching keep an eye on the budget, but the other on the public. I had reason to need to use them recently, and again, recently as today, and I can't stress enough how good it is to have a quick professional dispatch center and professional officers there when you need them. And just said the calls have gone up, and yet service is still, to my opinion, very, very high level. So I just want to throw kudos out to the group. That's it.
Councilor Zink.
Love potion number 9. One of the, I can tell you from a, and this is to you, Steve, from a counselor standpoint, having the department reports look like one another, feel like one another, address one another in the same type. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
but in all sincerity, are these available to citizens?
The packets are online,
Yeah.
so if everybody could read them.
I find this, for the first time since I've been on the council, to be informative and up-to-date and clear, and so kudos to you and your folks.
Councilor Levy has the second comment, but let me get my first one in here real quick. Keep it short, totally agree. Thank you. Having the same format makes it much easier to read. Snow and salt in the public works.
Yes.
Snow removal, excuse me. Where does that fall? Under which of those budgetary lines that's in there?
Pull up the budget.
Because I know this is through 12/31, correct?
Yep.
So we had some storm
We
there.
did have some storms. Public Works. Yeah, we all have to go this way. There is a winter salt and a winter sand line.
Where is that?
That is line, it's under
What page?
I'm on page 52 in our packets.
40, 42?
Oh, you're all the way up at the...
Yep, and you want the details.
Yeah, the details,
Yep.
okay. Which of these does it fall under, the top line? Because I'm assuming that the budget items we're getting in synopsis?
Roadways and
It's
sidewalks.
roadways and
Yep.
sidewalks, okay. And so, since you're looking at the detail,
Yep.
we're good, what's our percentage burn on that?
We have 27% remaining in salt, but you've got to remember, we buy a lot of salt at the beginning of the year, and we stockpile
Okay, so we have
it.
stockpile. okay.
Right, sand, we have 18%, again,
Stockpile.
we stockpile it,
And
so.
you
if
have
we-
no visibility right now on how we're doing?
No, I don't know off the top of my head what we are, but,
All right. The other question was about finance.
yes.
And Matt was here, but he's not here anymore. Or he's just not in the room currently. lines under financial highlights, where he goes into motor vehicle permits for December 2012 are 488,000 and change, 53% of budget revenues. Do you know if when he's saying, and it's for all these bullet points underneath, 53% of budget revenues, 56, 51?
We're higher. Is that what you're asking?
Well, my question is,
sorry.
that's all
Sorry,
right. You give the answer, I give the question. This is not Jeopardy.
I like Kreskin.
The question comes first. So when he's saying 56% of budget revenues for, say, ambulance, does that mean 56% of we had a budget for the month, or already at 56% of what we budgeted for the year?
For the year.
So 5 months into the 12-month year, we are,
End of December will be 6
or
months.
6 months, yeah, you're right. So 6 months in, we're over, anywhere we're over 50%, we're doing well.
That's correct.
So wastewater is 75% of but that's budget, not revenue.
Right.
That's an issue.
But that's when we took 300 and change
shift. Okay.
over to the capital reserve fund,
Alright.
so we already knew that was gonna be
Got it.
the big part.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Levy had a second. and
Just real quick, maybe that's tying in with my question on page 56, the water total,
Yes.
because I thought maybe I was reading it wrong, and
Nope.
I'm sure there's a big expenditure, but the budget was 843. Year-to-date at 608, they got 27% remaining, so what happened?
You
Was there s-
transfer, we
was
had to
that
transfer
big?
300,000 from the budget to the capital reserve fund.
And that's, okay, and, oh,
It's a one-time transfer. So you won't, it's not if they're gonna be overexpending it. We transferred,
okay, we transferred it because there was more than they needed. So I guess my or at least that was our interpretation, that they,
it's what's budgeted for the contributions to capital reserve funds through the CIP.
Yeah.
We can pull up the actual number.
I guess my question is 234,000 or 27% remaining a concern to you?
No, because we knew this large transfer is going to happen.
What Councilor Levy's getting at, though, is, and maybe another piece of information that could be in here is, percent remaining is nice to have. What their target percent remaining is supposed to be for this month would show us, you see what I'm saying? Like,
But if you're 50%, so 50% would be the
that's
number.
not true, though, because we know that the water is 27.8 remaining is not actually an issue,
Right.
because we know that they were budgeted to move that over to capital
I think we
reserve.
transferred
So
it
maybe
because
they
we knew we
should
had-
be around
No, this is-
27%.
Again, if you go to, in the detail, because you have the detail, on page 47,
Okay.
there is a transfer at the bottom where it says, transfer to capital reserve fund, 359,900. That is the contribution, much like we have our own line items for contribution to capital reserve funds. This is theirs, and it was transferred at this point in time in the year because of the fact the revenues were there. So we could do it at the end of the year, and you would see it be $359,000 higher until the very end, and probably coming at zero. We could do that in the future, just,
I don't think we should tell you how to expend month to month. I just want to know whether or not
We
to
are
be
on target.
concerned when I see a 27%.
no, we're not.
That's
That's
what-
why I
that's what I was
said,
asking,
but that's
really.
why and I said that when I gave the report, I said we're at 75%. We understand, though, this was a one-time transfer, so we're not any concern.
Yeah.
I stated,
However you want to convey the information, I
Yeah.
just think it's important, because his question is getting, the root of the question
Yeah.
to me, I think, is, Councilor Levy, correct me if I'm wrong, is it, should we be concerned when we see
nope,
27%?
it was in my report, and I usually do highlight those changes or
Those
any issues like that.
anomalies.
Yeah.
Councilor Zink.
The comment on page 16 on financial highlights, we keep hearing about this rooms and meals tax is going to be, I don't know whether it's going to be withdrawn back into the state, but it looks like we're not going to get it.
Well, we are getting it.
No, well,
Yeah.
I misstated.
Yeah.
But my question is this trend being reflected in revenues in our next year's budget?
Yes, we are doing a little more conservative. I can tell you, I met with House and Senate leadership yesterday to sort of plead our case for a number of revenues that we need, such as state aid grants that we're owed money. And as I was telling the story, we're not as bad as Jaffrey, who was owed $6 million. We're owed only $150,000. But we also made the case about rooms and meals, because originally we're supposed to be at 40% of whatever the state takes. the towns and cities would get. We're only at 29%, and they moved it back to 26% a few years ago, and we're trying to creep it back up. We're not even saying get us to 40, just don't keep dropping us.
But is that reflected?
Yes, we're being more conservative in our estimates.
Thank you.
Other questions and comments? Yeah, I was being facetious when we were talking about Jaffrey, and that they're owed like $6 million. And my facetious comment for the people that were not involved with the conversation was, I would just say after all the property taxes we're collecting, I wouldn't send you anything to the state because you owe me $6 million. I mean, that's just, so I guess my question to you is, why not?
We don't send a lot to the state. We don't send, it's not like, most people assume that we take our money, send it to the state, and they send it back. That doesn't happen.
Well, but we send a portion of our property tax to the state,
No.
correct?
It doesn't
Nothing.
go to the state and come back, no.
Well, I know it doesn't go to the state and come back, but I'm saying,
No,
in
we
the
don't
property, county, school,
County is
town,
county, school is school.
Then
State school does not
state
go to
school
the
does not
state.
go- Okay,
It stays with us because we're a receiving district.
got it. So state school actually sits here in the.
Yes.
All right. That's good to know. Counselor Levy?
Just on page 65, the wastewater revenues are 75% of our budget. Could you explain as to why, you said you were going to keep a watchful eye on this trend? It's on page 65.
I think Matt actually typed that one.
Yeah, Matt typed that's.
Yeah, it surprised me as well, and I'm actually speaking with Sean tomorrow, so I don't have an answer for that at this exact moment.
So they're at 75% of budget,
Yes,
which means theoretically you'll have a
surplus,
surplus?
theoretically.
Okay.
But I want to speak with Sean to make sure I'm not missing the boat on that, because what we've done so far is we made sure that the billings are exactly where they should be, meaning that we are billing for every quarter timely, and there are no quarters billed in advance, which would bump up that number, okay? So we are where we should be.
So you look and you're doing month-to-month, year-to-date, and it's it's accurate that it's 75% of budget?
Yes,
Okay. Well, it'd be nice to know, like you said, why.
exactly.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you again, Town Administrator, for that. We'll move on to the next item, which is council representative reports from committees. And the first one is Councilor Carmichael from the Planning Board.
Yes.
Even though your chair is sitting right here.
The
Town planner.
Better be great.
Yeah, better be right. Let's prove you're not sleeping, Ed.
No making stuff up this time.
The love's falling out here, too.
You can't make it up like you normally.
We met on June 8th, and we discussed. January 8th.
You got him flustered.
Good thing you met in June.
I told you.
We met to discuss expanding the mixed-use functions within the downtown village area, and that's what we'll be discussing very shortly.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Carmichael. Highway Safety has not met. Councilor Wright, Conservation Commission.
Yep. Coming up on Tuesday, February 19th, from 7 to 9, Conservation Committee is going to be hosting a information forum, and it's going to consist of the health of the Great Bay, estuary, points of non-point source, pollution, and wastewater treatment, Newmarket. And the following people, there'll be Peter Wallenberger, there'll be Michelle Daly, and Sean Gregg, and there may be one other person. We're not sure yet. It's going to be very informative. It'll be on Channel 13. And we'll keep rerunning it. Just give people how important the Great Bay is, what it means to the community, and how important it is that we do get this new water treatment plant.
You said it's time and location again?
It's going to be right here, downstairs, Town Hall. It's the 19th from 7 to 9. And kudos to Ellen Schneider, who really put this together. She really has done a phenomenal job for this informational.
February.
Yeah.
February.
February. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor LaBranche, CIP and Efficiency Committees.
CIP is complete for the year, and there has been no activity with the Efficiency Committee.
Thank you. Councilor Levy, Budget Committee and EDC as well, if you could.
Budget Committee has not met for,
Nothing going on there.
no, Budget Committee met this past Monday. And we had public comment. People gave us their perspective on the town and the school. And we're going to be voting on the budget, I believe it's next Tuesday. I think it's at 7. You might want to correct me, is it 7 or 7? And I would suggest that, people that have opinions either way should be there, and I think there's probably public comment where they can come in and at least speak to things like, not like the last one we had, but, if they're interested, I would come. And we will be voting. As far as the Economic Development Committee, we met a few weeks ago. We had, I thought, a productive meeting. We discussed Newmarket as a whole, the goals of the committee, what each person thought made the most sense in their own minds as to what they'd like to see happen in Newmarket. Got a little perspective. We, I think, came to a consensus that it might be worthwhile to bring in a consultant to help us formulate a potential plan for what makes the most sense for the town as far as going forward with development. And that would entail the consultant. It would entail getting public input at some charrettes and other avenues or venues for that. And I believe we're going to be trying to meet in February. In fact, I spoke to one consultant today that was going to be getting me some information, and I was going to forward that to all the other committee members, and I asked them to CC Steve. I hadn't received it. They were just getting over the flu. And I think I covered most of it. Did I miss anything on the, is that pretty much?
Nope, I think that was it.
Okay.
But we're going to be meeting again.
Sometime maybe in February. I think it'd be nice to, maybe if we're going to have a couple of people come in and talk to us, it would be nice to put all that together, so we haven't set a date yet.
Could I make just a comment? I've been following the economic development activity in Durham somewhat on Channel 22, and I know they've hired a consultant, and it might behoove us to contact Todd or somebody that's gone through that selection process, find out how they, get some perspective from them as to how is the consultant working well, had they to do it over again, would they do things differently? I know they are extremely involved in it right now, so I think Todd might be a good.
Yeah, just on that line, I've been watching some of their meetings too, and I would suggest people, if they're interested, to go to their website in Newmarket, and they can check out Durham's, and they can watch some of the meetings, I'm sure, and I found them interesting to watch. They're having, it's no secret, I think all the communities in this market are looking for revenues, they're looking for how to go about growth. I mean, we're not unique in this situation. I mean, if you've watched those, you've seen them struggling with the downtown and how they want to go about it, and they have petitions that are being signed by people. I mean, we're not alone. So.
Two things. One, I think that it brings to mind that we should ensure that our EDC meetings are televised so that the members of the community get to watch them as well. Sure. And wasn't noted, but Councilor Levy was actually voted chair of the Economic Development Committee.
I'm sorry, I should have said that. And Jerry O'Connell was voted vice chair.
Jerry O'Connell was voted vice chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that up on the website, the EDC and the members yet? Town website?
I'll have to check, I'm not sure.
I think that while we're on, just real quick, there's still 2 open seats, if I'm not mistaken. So if there's someone that wants to put their name in, this is the time to do it. I spoke to a couple of people, and I think one Jerry was going to have from the downtown business, and then I spoke to someone else that had some interest. So put your names in if you want to do it. So.
Thank you, Councilor Levy. Councilor Zink, Advisory Heritage Commission.
We have not met.
And Councilor Bentley unassigned.
I didn't meet with myself.
That's good.
You sure soon,
Thank you very much, councilors. So item 6, discussion and presentations. We have 3 today. The first will be restructuring of impact fees. The Planning Board Chair, Val Shelton. relocate chairs and stuff, so.
Yeah. Yeah, go down.
I think we can leave the light on. I think if they shoot up there, I'll tell you if you can see it on TV in a second, if you want to know.
I bet it's gonna be rough, but.
Well, hold on. When below down there, nope, it looks great.
It doesn't look great here, though.
Yeah, but
Oh,
it doesn't-
oh, that's true.
Could you get a, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
It's better.
yeah, that's true. Didn't think of that.
Good evening, I'm Val Shelton, Chair of the Planning Board. I appreciate you, Steve, inviting us in this evening to kind of, what I will say is probably going to be a repetition from where we were about a year ago, but with new counselors, now sitting on the council, he thought it'd be a good idea to kind of get this back on track where I think it was kind of stalled after January. So we've come. We haven't done anything in the past year, so what you're mostly going to see here is an update. And for the counselors in your packet, our planning board, my planning board memo for the next topic of agenda with the rezoning came before this, so I think we're on like page 78. So a little bit of history. The impact fee ordinance was actually adopted in the town in February of 2001. The fee structure analysis and review and the studies were done and completed in October 2000. The school at that time, because everything's based upon an analytical review and computation of costs associated with additional capacity from development. That's what the impact fee really provides for. So at that time, it was determined that the school impact fee would be, this is for single-family residential, $3,418 a unit. Recreation would be $276. The water portion impact would be $737, and the sewer would be $1,226. The first fees, I believe, were actually collected a year after that, 2002. In August of 2007, the town council actually hired Bruce Maybury, who was involved with the original ordinance development and analysis to determine the basis. So the town council at that time had Bruce Maybury do a review. There were some specifics of that review that I really wanted to highlight. Basically, it was important to note to the council that the impact fees, this is under the state RSAs, they cannot be used for the upgrades except as required to serve new development. The existing needs must be paid for with other funds, so if it's maintenance or things of that nature, or even upgrades to service the existing population base. The non-impact fee share of the costs must be appropriated within 6 years of collection, and otherwise they need to be refunded with interest to the owner of record, and that's also in our ordinance. Additionally, within that 2007 report, the fees may constitute a recoupment of past investments in capacity to serve new development used as part of capital budget for future projects, or used to pay debt service on facilities completed which have remaining capacity to serve new development. And I'll come back to that comment. So basically, the questions that he wanted the council at that time to consider was, is the capital basis for the fee structure still the same? I mean, at that point now it's 7 years old, and impact fees really should be looked at least every 5 years, as far as this, what the capital basis is that these numbers are derived from. Other questions that he asked, the fees that have been collected and aged, have they been appropriated or have they been refunded? That's more of an accounting bookkeeping matter. The increase in school capacity to serve new development, has that actually occurred? The Recreation Master Plan, are the same standards and investment objectives that were used back in 2000 when this was based on still the same? And the same with the water and sewer, were the proposed uses at that time consistent, or what was happening in '07 consistent with the original basis? So, best we could tell from the planning board research, nothing really happened after the August 2007 review, until September 2010, when the planning board went to do we had a review, again, because of the ordinance, it was requiring the planning board to do a review. So we revisited it, we had a committee established, we went in, we reviewed all the records from inception, we reviewed the ordinances, our impact fee ordinance in specifics, and the RSAs as well. The committee, there was 3 of us on the committee from the planning board. We also attended a workshop that the New Hampshire Office of Energy and Planning was giving. Actually, Matt Maybury was the speaker up in Whitefield, and we did that in November of 2010. And to be honest with you, it's a very complex situation to really grasp without outside advice and assistance. So we retained the services of Bruce Maybury in May of 2011, and he provided reports and findings to us in September of 2011, and then we reported to the findings and recommendations to the planning board in November of 2011. We delivered our reports to the council a little over a year ago, in December 2011. Interesting, in our report, we really had the same issues that were raised by Matt in 2007, plus at that time we also had concerns over accounting costs. Was it the time, the expense of personnel and trying to track this, and the questions of whether or not they're being utilized as appropriate. That issue has gone away, but that was an issue at the time. And then in January 2012, that was after we reported to the council, there was a workshop discussion. I believe there was supposed to be some follow-up by the town administrator at that time, and that just didn't occur. So let me just go through from the ordinance what the impact fee chapter is. And this is just to summarize a couple of the items. So this is in the Newmarket Town Ordinance under Section 707B9. The impact fee shall not exceed the cost of, again, it's providing additional expanded public capital facilities, and it's necessitated by new development in Newmarket, or to compensate the town or the school for public capital facility capacity that provide anticipation of new development in Newmarket. So if you're planning to add capacity, like if you bond something and then build it, it's to recapture that money. In Section 707J, the use of funds, specifically any funds withdrawn, they shall be used solely for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, or expanding, equipping, or improving public capital facilities. And this is the key, to increase their capacity or to recoup the cost of such capacity improvements. And at the end, 707N, the methodologies are adopted by the planning board for the impact fee assessment and any associated fee schedules. We're supposed to review those periodically and amend them as necessary. And we need to really do this review at least every 5 years, not more than 5 years from the additional adoption. So it really should have been reviewed in 2006. And then any proposed changes shall be submitted to the council for its review and comment. So we're hoping to get back on track with that last comment. In the state statute, there was a change in 2004 that did affect our ordinance, which again was adopted in 2001. A lot of it had to do with simplification and clarification of ordinances, and then just, to have updates that would bring the sections of the ordinance in compliance with the 04 statute. That would be another reason to revisit this. And then also, especially for Newmarket, this RSA 674:39, this was also a change in 04, where it incorporates specific limitations on the vesting period applicable to impact fees on development within the previous approved plats. And what's interesting to note here is there are probably instances where construction of lots within some of the older approved plats occurred would now be subject to impact fees under the new RSA. So like a lot of previously approved, what we'll call grandfathered, they were approved before the impact fee ordinance was adopted. The state statute clarified or was amended in 04 to allow impact fees to be assessed against those developments. But our ordinance does not provide for that. So again, our Planning Board 2011 report, our findings primarily focused on the questions relating to whether the funds were used for projects which increase capacity. And the bottom line there was there any liability to the town, any exposure to refund fees that have been, taken out and distributed. The cost and time of the accounting and administration, I mentioned that's all been dealt with. And but to summarize, are there better methods to offset the cost of expansion and maintenance? And we'll talk about the systems development charges, which is really what our recommendation is. So we came to, a year ago, we came to the conclusion that with the current ordinance that's on the books, it's been adopted, our recommendation was to repeal that ordinance after the town council adopted system development charges for water and sewer. The key about this is system development charges are very different than impact fees. They're not tied to any increased capacity of new development, which causes the expansion. So they can, or the capital, the capital improvement. They can be used for expansion and maintenance of facilities and infrastructure. There's no time period, there's no 6-year limit where you have to appropriate it and use it, or you have to give it back. And then furthermore, the planning board has authority to negotiate off-site improvements as part of a development review process. So some of these other items, that may be part of a site plan review, we could negotiate off-site improvements as part of that site plan review, as opposed to impact fees. And then we can always revisit it later, particularly when you come up with a specific project which would increase capacity. One of the things that Bruce Mayberry really concluded was it's so much better to have a project, understand what the capital cost of that is, what the proportionate share is attributed to the requirement for providing the expanded capacity relative to new development, and then being able to establish your fee structure and your collection structure accordingly. So basically using it to help pay back bonds for certain projects. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Matt, can we get the lights? Oh, thanks, Al. Questions for Val?
Just a general question. Your recommendation on the change in impact fees, would a developer look at these favorably, unfavorably, or would the developer not be concerned either way?
Impact fees for new development is a cost of the development. They have to calculate that into the cost of doing business in Newmarket.
But would this proposed fee structure be favorable?
I'm not sure I understand the question. We haven't proposed any fee structure. This is what's currently on the books.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was a change.
System development.
No.
System development.
So,
charge.
a system,
I'm talking.
if we rescinded even if we just rescinded the fee portion for the water and sewer impact fee,
Yeah.
and a system development charge was established, Sean's group would do that, with a consultant like a Bruce Mayberry to come up with, with what should that charge be. You can allocate it over so much more development, as opposed to a development that is solely the need to increase capacity. So most municipalities are going to system development charges for things such as water and sewer. And then your hands aren't tied either. The downtown Main Street project, a perfect example. If instead of impact fees coming in, and the money was coming in through system development charges, you would have had no discussions about whether or not it was appropriate to use the impact fees. That discussion would never have had to occur. The money could have been used for expansion, improvements, maintenance.
Vice Chair Bentley.
Thank you, Val, for the presentation. A different question than Al's. Dollar for dollar, I certainly like not having the 6-year period, and that's kind of hard to manage, and certainly from no fault from any current people here in this town hall or anything, we didn't do ourselves any favors, with this in the past. But dollar for dollar, whether we call it an impact fee or a system development charge, it brings monies into the town that we have the chance to use appropriately. If we're calling it something different, would it still be close dollar for dollar?
I wouldn't know the answer to that, because I would think that you would really need to do that broad-based analysis. Just as we would now, where when you say dollar for dollar, the fees that we have, that we're currently assessing for impact fees, were based upon 2000 data. And based upon what we thought the cost was to add increased capacity for new development in a school, increase capacity for the recreational master plan at that time, i.e. cost to build new fields, and what the proportionate share was for the population growth. So there's a lot of data that's collected and analyzed, and the planning board doesn't have the, the capacity to do that.
That's something maybe Bruce, maybe could
Absolutely,
help-
that's what they do.
help with. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Levy.
Okay.
Just a couple things. One is sort of a question from, there was a statement made in this documentation that the school had used some money that had been questioned for the engineering and everything, and were the impact fees allowed or not allowed? And I think Mr. Mayberry actually asked the question, and I thought he came down on the side that it was not appropriate. Didn't we ultimately find out that it was appropriate to use those impact fees, or?
Well, we actually had it went so far as to get a response from Attorney Richardson.
Okay.
And this is specific.
Yeah.
A vote to encumber those funds should be as provided by RSA 32-7 before the expiration of the 6-year period, subject to the return if the school district does not vote to proceed with the acquisition. Goes on to say, a more prudent way of approaching this would have been to wait until the school was built and then use the impact fees on a pro rata basis to reimburse the portion of the costs with impact fees that are attributed to new growth. So it's two issues. You're taking the money, but you never really know if you're building or adding additional capacity. So do you always have that liability hanging out there? At what point in time does the person who you took the money from come back and say, you haven't used it to add the increased capacity, which is what the impact fee was for.
Okay. Because I could be mistaken, but I remember this was a while ago this all happened. And I thought after the whole thing was finally vetted, that it was determined that it was an appropriate use, but if I'm mistaken, so be it, but that's.
And that may be. This is, again, we're a year later. This was
Absolutely,
this
I
was
think-
December of
I'm pretty sure.
2011.
I'm pretty sure I'm.
So it was last spring, I think, that we got received, because we asked the question again, it was brought up again, because I was chair at that point in time, and it was still written fairly vaguely, I think what Val just read, but at the end, it said that it was basically it said it was appropriate use.
Okay. And
Right. But
It was not written very black and white, though, I'll say.
provided the capacity is eventually built.
So just a couple quick things, and then I'm along the same lines of what was asked. My sense is, my question was, if we change the impact fees to the SDC system, will this ultimately bring in less or more money? I think at the end of the day, I wouldn't feel comfortable changing anything until I knew the answer to that question. Okay, at the end of the day, we need to know what the plan is before we get rid of something. At least that's my impression. And just the last point I would make is on page 83, and maybe you can explain this, Val. On page 83, impact fees waived, there's a breakdown of assessments. It says school, recreation, sewer, and water. Impact fees waived, page 83. It appears that a very high percentage of the fees were waived. For example, schools collected $263, waived $1.4 million. Recreation, $46,000, collected, waived $214. Sewer, $87, collected, waived $534,000. Water, $54,000, collected, $323,000, waived. So my question is, are we waiving all these fees because the development would just say goodbye? Or can you explain why we're waiving? Yeah, because I certainly didn't know. It seemed like a high percentage.
If you recall in Val's presentation, she mentioned that there was an RSA that was amended in 2004. And one of it, in a portion of that RSA, clarified that, in fact, their impact fees can be charged against grandfathered lots. These are lots that were created before the enactment of the impact fee program in 2001. When the town went forward with the impact fee program in 2001, there was an uproar from several of the developers in town, whose names I will not mention. And there was a threat that there'd be a lawsuit, that if the town went forward with the imposition of impact fees, that, you know, they would go to court and fight if the town tried to charge impact fees against these pre-existing grandfathered lots. And we were provided at the time, and I have a copy of the memo, a memo from Malcolm McNeil's office saying that given the fact that this is sort of a gray area, and this was before 2004, and it was a gray area, he recommended that we go forward and grant, in a sense, waivers for those grandfathered lots.
So all
And
these-
that's what the majority of
That's
the
all it
waivers, if you look at the history of waivers over time, you'll see the bulk of them were granted in 2001 and 2002. We find out now, you know, in 2004 that, gee, our legal counsel was wrong at the time, and we could have, in effect, charged impact fees for some of those pre-existing grandfathered lots. But at this point, it's really water over the dam, and we can't go back retroactively and build them. And we also asked that question of our legal counsel, Justin Richardson, at the time, and he advised that that would not probably be an appropriate course of action.
So Mike, so that question
So-
I had in that, on page 83, whatever it was, all that was,
Not all, but the
Majority.
majority of those fees, and I can show you the figures, were
Okay.
from that period where we, and the planning board, and it's very clear in the records that the planning board did make an effort to grant waivers for those lots that were pre-existing so that they would not be subject to the new impact fee law.
okay, last follow-up. So if we had this other thing, just for sake of argument, this, whatever it's called, the ESR, whatever. it
System
is,
development charge?
would that also be grandfathered?
No, because the impact fee statute comes under the state planning statute, and it's related to the planning board's approval of development. So it's a land use control. The other provisions for system development charges comes under a different RSA altogether. It's out of the realm of land use planning, so it doesn't follow the vesting criteria and the vesting case law that planning decisions do. So it would be covered under a different set of legal precedents, I guess is the way you describe it.
Councilor Wright?
Does that help to clear? It's, as you can see, there's a lot of gray areas, and I think there's some, you know, uncertainty as to what we can do and what we can't do, and how far we can use impact fees without
Had a lot.
possibly exposing ourselves to litigation. And I think that's what the gist of the
I learned
concern
anything
is
about
raised
state
by the planning
government
board.
is that it's gray.
But just to her point, you said a second ago that after further review, it turned out that we could have collected and those grant.
But that was in 2004, for those lots,
Oh.
right,
The law changed in 2004.
right.
Thank you.
Councilor Wright?
Yeah, Val, I got a question for you. Is there any way where we get an example of the impact fee versus the SDC? And let's say you have the EDC Development Committee.
Sure, perfect example.
So let's say developers out there say, you know what, I'd like to put a 20,000 square foot commercial building in town. How is that going to, is there a way to get a breakdown on what that would cost them for the SDC versus the impact? Are you at that
You'd
stage
have to
yet?
go, no, because that's not something that, you know, we're not going that route until in the planning board wouldn't. It would be through the town council and through Sean's, you know,
It'd be water-
Sean
it's
Gregg's
through
water
water
and
and-
sewer department. Right. It would be,
So-
it'd be very much associated with the same process you go through for a water tie-in or a sewer tie-in fee. You know, what's the process that the council goes through or the water and sewer department to determine what that amount is?
Now, what-
Systems development charge
Yeah,
would be similar to that process.
okay.
It's outside the realm of the planning board.
Now, has that ever been
And
looked,
it's not waivable either.
Right.
And to just follow up on on Gary's question, the planning board, I don't know how many years I've been on it now, but we've definitely waived several impact fees, particularly for school relative to projects such as Bryant Rock, perfect example. The developer brought in a fiscal impact study. It was very much determined that that was going to be a project that was not going to, add significant, school-age children. And so they made the case, and very well should have, that while they would have paid their water and sewer impact fees, because that was an expansion of the capacity requirements, they made the case that they didn't have to pay the school impact fees. And there's been other projects such as that. Someone comes in because they're wanting to build an accessory apartment, in their house. And it's an existing house, they're not adding any additional construction, they're just converting a section, they're not adding another water tie-in or water sewer line, and yet they're subject to the same impact fees that a 5-bedroom, single-family house would, that someone's building new in town would be subject to. So there's been those instances where if it's in an in-law situation where we may not, and there's no additional increase, they haven't added a bedroom, why would they be paying an additional impact fee?
Anything else, Councilor Ray? Real quick before I go back to Councilor Bentley, or Vice Chair Bentley, excuse me. So we keep mentioning about the SDC. We keep talking about water and wastewater. Would it only apply to those two? It wouldn't go to school or recreation,
Right.
anything like that? We keep impact for them.
Yeah, your system development charges are really dealing with your systems. What are the systems? Well, for the Newmarket, there are water and sewer. There may be other systems, but that's primarily what municipalities are dealing with.
Okay. We've already talked about, we would need some form of analysis to determine what the
Yes.
rates would have to look like in
Right.
order to break
Yeah.
even.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
the next step, when we had hired Bruce Mayberry in 2011 to do this, it was really going to be a two-phased approach. The first was analyze where we are today, analyze our ordinance, where we are to compliance with the RSAs, go back, do all the kind of fiscal analysis and audit, and come up with recommendations. So that was kind of the first phase. I think maybe $4,500 was expended.
6,000.
Okay. And we had a budget of 20. The second phase of that would have been utilized in order to do all the fiscal analysis updating, because you need to, bring the base up to determine what the actual impact fee would be. Making it compliant with, those numbers, with the changes to the Recreation Master Plan, as well as the goals and objectives of the Water and Sewer Department, like, what are their long-range plans? And then the issue with the school. So that, $15,000, let's say, $15,000 was going to be allocated to development of updating that ordinance. But it just makes more sense to tackle the system development charge separate from the impact fee. Whether or not you want to do away with the impact fee or just keep it on the books and update the base analysis for the school and the recreation, that could be up to the council. So you could do it in a multi-stage effect. One of our big issues at the time was the issue over the bookkeeping and the accounting of this. And we really felt at that time, this is over a year ago, that the town had significant exposure. But that's not the case. So I think that issue has gone away. So you could do this in a multifaceted approach, but again, the biggest benefit from the system development charge is you don't have the 6-year constraint. You don't have to limit it to, what portion of this. So let's say you're going to spend $100 to, extend a sewer line, and you're really benefiting not 100% new construction. It's only you're benefiting with that, whatever that upgrade of capital capacity is, for 5%. You're only supposed to use 5, you're supposed to be matching the other 95% with an impact fee. And that's because you're attributing it to just a 5% increase on the use of that capital system. So your hands aren't tied with the system development. And you can be updating that every year as part of, and you might want to combine it with water and sewer tie-in fees. I don't know. That would be Sean's and someone like Bruce to deal with.
So would we still keep the school and we'd still keep the recreation?
You could.
But theoretically, what we could change
would be going from this
other way of charging for water and sewer. And how long will it, what's the process to get a comparison, Steve? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, I think I'd have to talk with Sean to figure out what we would need to do to, basically come up with a study to determine how do we determine what the SDC would be, and then looking what the difference would be between the two. My sense is that, somebody mentioned the bringing in a business for 20,000 square feet. Well, in the system development charge, you can bring it doesn't matter what the square footage is, it depends on what they're using for the system.
Right.
If you brought in a water park, which versus just a warehouse, there's two different charges there because it's different usage, so.
And at the end of
But
the...
we got other people
Sorry.
online here, Counselor. So, one last question before Vice Chair Bentley, then back to Councilor Levy. I just want to make sure, I'm thinking second and third order effects. The SDC versus an impact fee, it wouldn't broaden the areas that we can charge. Yes, the SDC would only charge the same way we would charge an impact fee right now? Is that correct?
No,
Or?
no, absolutely not, because it would be different, let me put it that way. First of all, it would be a charge very much like as I mentioned, a water tie-in or a sewer tie-in fee. It's a charge associated with development that's associated or using the water and sewer, infrastructure. Which actually is another reason those would have been waived, because if someone's not on the water and sewer, they're on well and septic, we would have waived those impact fees at the planning board. But you're also dealing with, a lot of development, even though we get into this grandfathering and they're no longer grandfathered, of previously approved developments that have already paid their water and sewer tie-in fees. But that doesn't relinquish them from the responsibility of paying a systems development charge. Nothing is grandfathered under a systems development charge.
I just wanted to have one distinction is impact fees can only be used to pay for the cost of increasing the capacity of the system. System development charges can be used for that purpose, but also to address existing deficiencies in the water and the sewer system. So that many of the things that, Sean's been coming in with proposals for different improvements, they're really maintenance-type improvements that don't necessarily increase the capacity. Your system development charge can be used for both, whereas impact fees can only be used for one. System development charges, I believe, are not just a one-time charge, it's an ongoing charge as a user fee is for your water and sewer user fees.
So it would be a charge that would go out annually?
Could conceivably, and that's why I, would recommend that you bring in an expert, somebody who's worked with this type of system. I know in the past, Sean has worked with a consultant to help with some of the, water fees and helping to develop a schedule. I know the town of Plastow has had good results with this program. Perhaps we could call upon their engineer or town manager to provide some counsel to us or information to at least get us started and headed in the right direction.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. Vice Chair Bentley.
Well, a couple things, Val. So you said it's just water and sewer, but earlier someone asked, we would keep the town, these school and rec ones, we would almost have to, I guess, because if someone did make a project up on, whether it's zoned for that right now, that obviously I don't know, but up on higher Grant Road where they're not water and sewer, they could affect the town and rec department greatly and not be paying one cent, right? So this is just water and sewer.
Well, the recommendation to remove the water and sewer from the impact fee and move it to a systems development charge is a recommendation.
So
If we're keeping, and let's say that you agree to do that, that's the first phase of this. After that's done, then we would want to update the current ordinance, which would take those out, also bring the current ordinance in compliance with the current RSAs, and update the basis for which in this case, the school and the recreational impact fees, the financial basis and amounts of those of the actual fee to be charged. And that's what's required to be updated every 5 years. And we haven't done that in 12.
Okay, and the reason, because I think it's where Council Wright was going, and what I was trying to do before, maybe, I guess we'll need that analysis, because let's pretend right now we're getting 50,000 a year, and we find out by eliminating this, it's, 20,000 a year, then obviously that's a cost that taxpayers will pick up, so I think that's why we want to really see what the make-believe scenario would be right now. Anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Is that in our, this thing died, what you put up there, is that in our packet?
It's a summary of what
Val's
is in your
presentation?
packet.
Okay.
Your computer died.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and I'm
mean,
happy to email it over to Steve, and he can hand it
It's
out.
been stuck like that for quite a while.
Yeah.
I've unplugged, I tried to
Councilor Levy,
reboot.
you want me to take that?
My question was sort of tied to the whole theme, excuse me, which is, at the end of the day, who has the right to waive the impact fees?
Planning board.
So and would they also have the right to waive the other fee?
No, the planning board has nothing to do with the system development
Okay.
charge.
So, I think if we're going to, do an overview, Steve, it would be my suggestion or my thought that we see, what we've collected in the last, 5 years or whatever the timeline is, what we've waived other than grandfathering. Because, if we're looking for development, which clearly we are, and we're looking for development that's going to help reduce the tax rate, and we go through all this to determine the impact and how much it's going to cost the town to build infrastructure, and then we're going to waive it theoretically or not waive it to, bring someone in. And it's sort of a multi-tiered thing that we need to, I'd like to know what we've waived that wasn't grandfathered, for example, and have a little bit better understanding of, the likelihood of something being waived or not waived, and what we can sort of count on for revenues with both, options.
Keep in mind, what you're counting on for revenues, you really are matching in expenses.
Yes, I understand. Or, you can look at another way, we won't be reimbursed, but we look at the tax rate that'll
That's
be
right.
bringing in, and this is not like, A plus B equals C. I mean, this is a little more, there's more depth to it. There's, this can go a lot of different ways.
It's a very complicated subject.
But just to waive them, I think we need to think it through a little bit.
So regardless of whether or not we move to an STC or not, it sounds like we're at a place where we're multiple years late on reassessing what the impact fees are today and looking at what, so it seems to me, unless any counselor has an issue with this, the town administrator should look into what the cost would be to hire someone and allow us to vote on it at the next business meeting. And if it's high enough to go out to bid, probably need to do that too.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Phil.
Counselor Wright.
Dane, did I hear you concerned with the SDC, that in theory, it could be an ongoing charge? I mean, that's a little scarier for,
There you go.
that's extremely,
It's part of your use,
yeah.
Part of your
it's part of your user fee. It could be part of your sewer rates.
Could
That
be.
a certain
Could be, but-
percentage or X number of dollars of the sewer rate is attributed to future development and for maintenance costs.
But that's the
But
whole
I'm
thing,
not an-
maintenance costs. I mean, it's,
For-
if a developer's coming in, he's looking at Newmarket, and it's between one town that has the SDC, not another,
I-
and he's looking the what's his, I don't know what this could be.
It
1 year
becomes
down
a
the road?
user fee. The developer wouldn't pay that. The user would pay that.
What happened if the developer is a user?
Well, then he would have to incur that cost as part of the cost of doing business and being a
It's
Newmarket.
already on the system.
I am not that well-versed in system development charges to advise on how they come up with the basis, as Val was referring to, how they determine the cost. I would suggest bringing in somebody who has expertise in that area to show you how they've done it in other communities. It might be a percentage of the total user fee that's set aside for future expansion or for maintenance. I don't know exactly how, the formula that's used to determine it, so.
Just before we bring in a consultant and whatnot, would it be worthwhile to maybe call some of the other town managers in other towns
you know, like, for example, Portsmouth and Durham and Exeter, just to see what they're doing and why, and that might help give us a little feedback as to, you know, what else is going on and how people approached it, instead of maybe having to reinvent the wheel, or maybe we have to, I don't know, I can't
Still should get
urge.
the numbers of what the costs are.
Right.
It's all any other comments on this? Great. Next item agenda. Sure to be a short conversation. Proposed amendment to town zoning ordinance to expand the mixed-use functions to the downtown village area. Is there another
Hello.
presentation?
Yes, there
Okay. Matt, can we get the lights again? Or one second, give her a second to put it up.
No controversy here.
Good to go, Bob?
I like the handshake, that's a winner.
It's all about the loves. No, I actually picked this theme right when it came up, because this is really what it's all about. If we're gonna do anything in town, it's gonna be a partnership between the planning board and the town council. That's because that's the only way that zoning ordinances can be enacted, modified, or amended. So we are really, with this particular zoning change that we're proposing, we're looking to partner to expand Newmarket's urban development for a positive impact to our tax base, the residents who live here, visitors to our community, and just the general image of the town. Just to put a little history to this, after the Chapter 6 of the master plan, which is the economic development chapter, was established, there were some key responsibility items, and one of the responsibility items that was born or assigned to the planning board is to really kind of take a look at some, smaller areas of town, or just the general business areas of town, and were there some quick, easy, short-term ways to be able to make some modifications to the existing zoning ordinance to stimulate some business and economic development, or something to expand the tax base. So we formed a committee of 3 planning board members, myself, Justin Norman, and Janice Rosa. We started with, this is our existing zoning districts that we have in Newmarket, and for the, we have up in the upper left-hand corner is B3, that's the 152 area, which is most predominantly where our gravel pits are, and there's a couple commercial operations there as well. So that's all business. The light tan area. Down on the southern corridor, where you see B2, that is referenced as the old Black Bear, quote-unquote, area predominantly in the industrial park. B1 is kind of the Rockingham Junction and the athletic facility. M4 is the golf course property and an adjacent parcel next to that. The red, the orange in the middle is the downtown, and then which skirts north and south of that, the red area is also B1. So originally the idea was to focus just on the corridor, the Route 108 corridor, from the south town line to the north town line, and not do anything with the industrial park area or the B2 or the B3. Or the M3, that's another mixed-use area, which is in light blue. That's where the school is and the health center. And for the B3 and the B2, we really thought, and then in those particular areas, that really needed to be the foray of the Economic Development Committee. That's the reason to have that. These are major areas for rezoning within Newmarket that could have, huge impacts, depending on how those areas are rezoned, if they're rezoned at all. Right now, there's obviously very little going on in any of those areas, but if you're going to stimulate economic development in those business zones, that's a major 1 to 2 year process, just getting through the visioning and the planning and the consulting and then the development of ordinances. So after our first few meetings and public input sessions, the M4 we also decided to take out. So because we think the golf course needs to be also, part of a bigger vision, if we're going to change what the existing uses are there. So we really started to concentrate on just the adjacent areas to downtown, and moving forward more with an M2 type concept, which is mixed. That's the mixed use section. So it's, you want business development there, but you also want to expand the benefits of that mixed use concept that's within the urban center. And this is to accommodate population growth, as well as to get more service type or smaller type businesses in those areas. Then we went through additional public comments once we had a couple of original drafts of the ordinance, proposed, and we ended up taking out the northern corridor of everything north of the 108 bridge, the Lamprey River Bridge. So the proposal is to just rezone 37 parcels. The light blue area on the very top of the slide, that is Elm Street. And so both sides of Elm Street, they're currently zoned B1, and we're looking to have those changed to M2. This then coming down on the lower, middle lower section of the slide, that light kind of green-blue area is, it's the railroad tracks, that's, zone B1. And then kind of the urban, the residential infill area that's just south of the tracks. Now, interesting to note, because, zoning really only works well when it reflects what the existing uses are within the zones. And it's important to note that of these 37 parcels, 34 are non-conforming under our existing B1 zoning. They are the only parcels, the only 3 parcels that are conforming is the business park, which has the medical centers, the 2 buildings. Riverdale, because that's allowed in B1 to have an automotive repair facility, and that's now recently vacated. And CPM, that's the Cheney Property Management on 108, and that's a single-family house that's used as an office. That makes it conforming because it's a business use. So within these highlighted areas, or the 37 parcels that we're looking to change, those other 34 properties consist of single-family houses, duplexes, multifamily, some mixed use, where it might have residential and a commercial component. The library is there, and there are parking lots. And if I just take you through a little quick tour, so here's the parking lot up off of Elm Street. Most of this is used to accommodate the parking for the mill redevelopment project allocated to there. You have the Riverdale, which is over to the right-hand side, the little yellow building, and that's now vacant. Okay, coming on the other side of Elm Street, the old mill manager's house, that's all residential, multifamily. Coming past that, up Elm Street, you've got a lot of duplexes here, garage storage facilities. More multifamily over on the right. They're a triplex, duplex. You have the Lamprey, this is a mixed use. This is an office building for Lamprey Healthcare and parking facility, but they also have an apartment in there, so that's mixed use. Behind off of Elm Court, there's a large vacant parcel, and that's what we'll refer to as the old Marcel Blanchette property. On the other end, which is the southern end of 108 by the railroad tracks, you've got a residential structure. You have more residential. The one in the foreground, the yellow building, is mixed use. There's a hair stylist who works out of the house, home-based business there. But these are all residential duplexes and a single family. There's also a vacant lot that is next to Rite Aid, and that's kind of where we're stopping. On the other side, you have the section coming from the railroad tracks up to the 60 Exeter Road, which is really the medical buildings up off of 108. Again, there's the town lot as part of this that was acquired, and the house was burnt down, and then the town acquired it. You've got a couple duplexes, and then the single family that's used as an office. That's the back side of it. It's a fairly large lot. And you have conforming use, which is the Wentworth Douglas Professional Center and Dr. Fang's office building here. And this was all done under the current zoning. And then on the other side of that access road, you have 2 more residential structures, being multifamily. And so these are the areas we're talking about.
Gail, how big is that lot next to Rite Aid, do you know? Roughly.
I think it's like, yeah, because I have that noted on a slide, so I'll
Thank
call
you.
that out.
Thank you.
So why rezone this specific area? Well, right now, there's been limited commercial development has occurred anywhere on this B1 zone area. There's been several conceptual designs that have been presented to the board. Most just would require variance due to current zoning regulations. And the zoning board, they've commented that they're under constraints because of the RSAs and their, what is required in order to grant a variance, that there are projects that have come before them. They could possibly benefit the town, but they just don't have the ability to grant. They can't give someone a variance because they think it would be good for the town. You have to meet certain criteria, the 5 criteria, to get through that. I spoke briefly about Chapter 6 of the master plan, which this identifies the planning board. Our responsibilities is to examine and update the table of permitted uses in the zoning ordinance, consider providing more flexibility in determination of permitted uses, and assess the development review process and ensure that it provides flexibility, fosters business-friendly atmosphere, while encouraging quality development, and modify development regulations as appropriate to streamline the permitting process. So that's what we're really trying to do here tonight, is meet these 2 goals for short-term areas. And then I asked every candidate tonight that question, and I've asked it before. We're having a lot of difficulty under the current ordinances to get good plans approved. I mean, if they don't get the variances, they can't come before us. And we haven't, before we started this project, because it's obviously, as you can all understand, there's a lot of time and commitment involved. We wanted to understand the town council members would support changes to zoning, which would grant the planning board flexibility to move some projects forward. Key here is that would result in a positive fiscal impact for the town. And that was the question, and everyone answered in the affirmative that was asked to. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Diane Hardy, our town planner, and she's going to go through some of the specifics of the proposed changes.
Thanks, Val.
Don't touch that right here.
There are 7 areas within the zoning ordinance that are being recommended for changes, and they're listed on the slide before you. Go back. The first, as Val had indicated, was there would be a change to the zoning map, and there's really 3 areas, which will be 4 areas that will be looked at. The area on the north side of Elm Street, along Washington Street, Lincoln Street, and Spring. The south side of Elm Street, east of Spring Street, in back of the library. South of Route 152, east of Railroad Avenue, along the railroad right-of-way, and from New Road south along Route 108 to the police station and the Rite Aid property. Within the proposed zoning, there's a recommendation that the section pertaining to mixed special use permits be amended to allow for multifamily residential uses in excess of 3 units to be allowed by special use permit granted by the planning board, and a second special use permit revision for mixed-use developments including 3 or greater residential units. And the section that we're asking for revisions for is the M2 district, which is contained in Section 202 of the zoning ordinance. And there are proposals to change the table of permitted uses, which I'll go over in more detail, but the key changes are to the multifamily residential area and mixed-use developments, including 3 or greater units. And currently, mixed use and multifamily uses are permitted in the M2 district. They're currently under the purview of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. What the Planning Board is recommending that there be a shift, if you will, in that authority to the Planning Board. And before the Planning Board could approve that use, there would have to be a demonstration that there be a positive fiscal impact on the town. The second requirement is that there be a market analysis done by the developer to show that it is feasible to add the additional multifamily housing in the community. And the third prerequisite is that there be at least 2 on-site parking spaces per unit. That the multifamily units within a building could not be greater than 4 units per building, and that any residential units on Main Street, South Main Street, or Exeter Road be included on the ground floor, the street level, as opposed to completely residential on the lot. I mentioned that there were some changes proposed to our table of permitted uses, which is part of the zoning ordinance. And we've highlighted in red those changes that we're proposing. Currently, there is, on the 5th line down, currently there's a category for student housing, and we are recommending that that be deleted in its entirety. We are recommending a footnote to the table pertaining to multifamily residential, which I'll review in a minute. We're recommending that research development uses be permitted in the M2 district, automotive uses, fraternal organizations, office complexes, and of course mixed-use development. What we tried to do is assure that the uses within the proposed M2 district would be consistent with the uses that are currently in the B1, so none of the property owners would really be losing any rights, if you will, to use their property in accordance with our ordinance. We also made a few tweaking changes. We included in the B1 district commercial amusement uses, civic uses, fraternal organizations, and office complexes. On the second page, we have the 2 new footnotes which refer back to these conditions for number 6 for multifamily housing, which I reviewed earlier, which again puts the authority for multifamily housing units in the hands of the Planning Board, provided that the certain criteria are met. And also item 7, which pertains to mixed-use development, which just is an editorial revision to show that there's another section in the zoning ordinance that pertains to those requirements. Going back to section 202, currently there is a array of design standards in the zoning ordinance, and after much discussion, the Planning Board thought, in order to provide additional flexibility, that it would be more appropriate to move those design standards to our site review ordinance, which is under the purview of the Planning Board. And one of the more substantive changes is the Planning Board is recommending that restrictions that currently exist on drive-through facilities in the M2 district be removed so that there would not be any restrictions. And I think in looking at our commercial areas, we see there's really two businesses with drive-through facilities, our Rite Aid and the bank. And in those instances, they're to the rear or to the side of the property, and they really don't have an adverse impact. And the thought of the Planning Board is that we could better control those types of design features through the site plan review process. Another provision of the zoning as proposed is that the Planning Board would have the ability to waive road setbacks, side setbacks, and structure height requirements. and that would be done through a special use permit granted by the planning board. And this is our table of dimensional uses, and you'll see that there is a footnote that provides for that. There's also a revision from a 50-foot height requirement in the M2 zone to a 35-foot height requirement. Go back for a minute. The waivers, in order to get a waiver, there's, uh-oh. How do I get out of here? I want to go forward to the next. I think we repeated it. Yes. Okay. Okay, the planning board, in reviewing a special use permit for any waivers to dimensional requirements, would have to assure that the use is consistent with the purpose of the district, the M2 district, is suitable for the location proposed, would not provide any adverse impacts, and the proposed setbacks and heights would have to be consistent with the character, if you will, of the surrounding neighborhood. So we'd look at the existing buildings on either side or across the street from the lot in question, and rather than having a prescribed standard, we try to make sure that the requirements were compatible with what was currently there, so that the new structure would blend, if you will, with the character of the neighborhood. As part of the revisions to the zoning ordinance, we're suggesting that the current downtown overlay district be removed from the ordinance, and the reason for that is we've incorporated all of those requirements into the new language for the M2 district, which I reviewed earlier. We are also recommending some changes to the mixed-use development section of the ordinance, section 702. Previously, there was a requirement that no more than one residential structure be allowed on a lot, so we're suggesting that be removed. Okay. All of this development for mixed use would be subject to a site plan review by the planning board. And currently, there's a density requirement for mixed-use development that's for 1 unit less than the permitted density, which currently the density for the M2 district is 6 units per acre. With that, I'll turn it back over to our chairman.
So again, what we're really trying to do is make it less burdensome for a property owner, developer to come before the town with their project, as opposed to having to go to the zoning board, hopefully get a variance before they could even submit the project to the planning board for site plan review. But the key to all of this is that in order to grant that special use permit, again, as Diane said, it has to be consistent with the purpose of the district, the M2 district. It needs to be suitable for the location which is proposed. It would not cause any significant adverse impact, environmental or traffic impact. But the key is it creates a positive fiscal impact for the town. Our goal here is to expand the tax base in Newmarket in a positive direction. We were asked by one of the planning board members to, what is the impact of potential additional multifamily units if this is adopted? So we went through and did the table of the 37 lots by the acreage, calculation to square footage, and then, because dividing by 6 per acre, it's truncated, you don't get any portions of units. And so we went through each specific lot area. On the column allowed units by lot size, it would total 109. There are 47 existing units there. Some of those units, all those that are in yellow, they're non-conforming, they're grandfathered. You have lots that are, 0.022 acres, number 10. They wouldn't support one residential unit, yet there is one on there. So you can go through those. So there are 18 of those that are non-conforming units. If you come over to the potential new units that actually could be built, this would have some incredible assumptions associated with it. It's just not reality. The existing use issues for these lots apply. Some of the lots, as I pointed out, are parking for other projects. That would be the U2 240, U261, that's, I believe, is the parking lot for the mill redevelopment. So they wouldn't be able to put 11 more units on there. The railway comes through, the units up at the top, number 2 and 3, 9 units, that you'd have to remove the railroad, and you still wouldn't be able to build them because you wouldn't be able to meet any of the setbacks for residential. There's also land constraints. You know, some may not work because of wetlands or topography issues. So there are various items, particularly on these larger, the ones that show the 11, 10, 14 units, that just wouldn't be possible, you know, because of other constraints on those. The other issue that we talked about, the expansion of multifamily question. Keep in mind that when someone does a mixed-use project, and Kent Place over here is a perfect example, many times those residential units are actually condominiums. We cannot regulate, condominiums versus apartments at the planning board level. The municipality can't regulate that. That's a deed ownership issue. But there certainly is a financial incentive for the developer who's trying to finance these projects to go condominiums. Case in point will be the Water Street project that's coming before the planning board later this month. They really need the condominiums to support that project. They need to sell the residential units to support the commercial development of that. It's simply good urban planning. People want to live and work and socialize kind of in these urban centers. This has been the trend nationally. We're seeing the success of that with the mills downtown. It was great to drive through town tonight, and even though we just had a snowstorm, there were lots of people out just walking around and going in and out of the businesses. It was nice to see. We want to reduce sprawl. We talk about the cost of expansion of infrastructure, of water and sewer in the town. It would be nice to reduce that. It would be better to move people closer to the urban center. Also get, people, young and old, closer to public transportation. And then again, I just mentioned supporting local businesses. Impact studies would be required for any projects greater than 3 residential units or any multifamily units. Those are required. And then I think also key to this is there's no residential allowed on the first floor of the building if it's along 108 Main Street or Exeter Road. So when you come back over to the table, these 37 properties, a significant portion of them would not, they would have to be mixed use if they're going to have these units associated with them, if they're allowed. So again, we're here to partner with the council to expand Newmarket's urban development. We really want a positive impact to our tax base, our residents, our visitors, and our image. We want the blight of things, and I'm sorry if I'm picking on any property owners in the audience. There are some key projects that could come before us that would really get rid of these types of things. Or urban infill. This is the backside of the mill redevelopment parking lot section. And they could transition, to the residential areas, which is really what mixed use is all about. It's a transitional area. The backside of, Elm Court, the old Marcel Blanchette property. We had a lot of feedback from abutters who came and spoke in favor of a project that the owner is proposing to make this undeveloped lot, instead of a business, more consistent with the neighboring properties, which are these historic little duplex houses. So that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to keep this beautiful image of coming into town, along the whole gateway. And we're looking at the north and south sections of the downtown adjacent to it, and much of which is already mixed use. We've got a beautiful downtown. We're winning awards. It was great to see that Boston Globe article. And that's really what Newmarket's all about. We want to become this destination, and we want to just kind of expand on the success that we've been able to achieve, and also all of the, the investment that the town has made. So with that, I thank you for your time. I know that was probably more than what you expected. Most all of this information is in your packets, and I'd be happy to also, again, put the PowerPoint presentation. I can forward that to Steve. But at this point, we'd love to answer any questions.
So before the counselors, I'm sure counselors have a lot of questions. Before you do, recognize that there would be at least one, if not two public hearings for we could vote on any sort of zoning change. So we can have questions of the town planner and the planning board chair, but this is not going to be in any way voted on tonight. So with that, questions? Vice Chair Bentley? You just hit a button. I don't know which one you meant to hit.
No, I gotta wait a minute.
All right.
Well, I have one. For residential, if you had a commercial space down below, residential, each residential unit on top has to have 2 parking spaces, correct?
That's correct.
Now, for the business, it'd be the same square footage for the business that we exist and have for the B1 zones for parking?
No, the parking requirements would be under the M2, and I'll have Diane come up and speak specifically to the ordinance.
In the B1 district, there's a schedule of parking requirements based on, so many spaces per square footage, number of tables, et cetera, et cetera. In the M2 district, we've designed the parking to reflect, or to provide some flexibility. So somebody developing in that area isn't required to provide all those parking spaces. They can provide the opportunities for shared parking with adjacent property owners. There's an option that they can perhaps park in the municipal parking lot and have a lease arrangement with the town to satisfy their parking requirements. We also provide the opportunity for the developer's engineer to put together parking standards based on nationally accepted standards through the Institute of Traffic Engineers, I believe, ITE. And so we do have more flexibility in the M2 district for parking requirements than we do for the B1 district, given the fact that we have an existing area that's already developed. We have fairly small lots. There isn't a whole lot of room, and we have to really maximize the space that we do have for parking. So there is a built-in incentive there for development in the M2 district with respect to parking requirements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but in respect, so it's going to be a bigger building, per se, with less parking. My concern is parking. I mean, we have parking concerns downtown, and you said,
A smaller building,
well, a smaller building, but, I mean,
because of just the reduction in the height, 50 to 35.
well, I mean, I could see a commercial building or commercial residential coming in, commercial on the bottom floor, residential on the top, and then the entire lot, I mean, I don't, could be too much I don't know, I'm just concerned about the flexibility of parking.
Yeah, and the planning board would have the same concern, Counselor Wright, because every project is going to be site-specific.
Right.
And without having that flexibility, that's the reason we're not seeing the development on these small, I don't even want to call it development, it's really a revitalization of small, non-conforming lots. And how do you change that without being able to look at each project individually on its own merits?
Okay, yeah.
Vice Chair Bentley.
Couple of questions. We just talked about structure height, but that's one of the things that could be waived up there, right? It said from 50 it could be waived, one of the...
It could be waived from 35 if it's consistent with the adjoining neighboring properties.
Only if it's consistent with what's near it?
Correct.
Okay. And then several times we saw...
Here's a good example of this. We approved the building on Spring Street, M2. Yes. Height restriction's 50. It's not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, but we didn't have any control over that. The height restriction was 50.
Okay, and we saw, I know after last week's vote that you folks took, I got emails, I know some other councils got emails on it, and I just saw up there several times a positive fiscal impact, and I just questioned what the positive fiscal impact, the lot next to Rite Aid, which is a pretty small lot. I know Joyce has tried to buy it at one point, and so conceivably, someone could put a business in the bottom of it and have 3 residential on the top. Correct? Could.
Could have more than,
Just could.
have enough parking and.
And so I just don't know the fiscal impact, so they could, and the guy next to it, in the Brian Randall
Yeah.
house, could be blown down and have where Brian lives, the red house in the corner of the police station, could be blown down and have a doctor's office downstairs that gives some tax to the town, and then have 3 residentials, and this is what I heard all week. And what are they doing? That, they're gonna tax off police, fire, school, and I think that's the question
Why
out there.
we require as part of the review process that the developer give us a fiscal impact statement that shows what the impact is going to be on the town, what it's going to bring in terms of tax revenue per unit for the commercial, what the revenue will be, and then the flip side of that is looking at what is the cost going to be to the town in terms of providing service to those units and educating the kids and what have you. And if it turns out that the equation shows that it's going to have a negative impact on the town because it's not going to be supported by the revenue it generates, the planning board can't approve the plan because it doesn't meet the criteria
On a case-by-case basis.
on a
each
case-by-case basis. And that's why we wrote it that way. So it's not a slam dunk deal that they're going to get their permit. They have to be able to prove that there's going to be
one.
a
And I guess I would
positive
just question
impact.
how any residential could ever have a positive.
Not-
May I?
Sure.
Bryant Rock. Is that a positive impact? Are we generating $250,000, I think, from there, at least? Steve, you probably know that.
Right off the top of my head.
That where you live?
Phil, you know.
We are definitely thinking.
What will we be generating, from the mill? I mean, $20 million project? I mean, to make a blanket statement, I would take the position, particularly in real estate, to say what costs the town money is single-family houses that are built in, tract developments on the outskirts of town. Costs the town a lot of money.
not me.
The planning board met with the tax assessor, Andy, at one point, and we said to him, Andy, what's the best kind of development that we could have in Newmarket? The response was, you can't have it anymore. You've conserved all your high taxable land. The highest taxable, profitable developments for communities is waterfront, high-end residential. Empty nesters, big expensive houses, big taxes, typically very little burden on the community. That's not an option for Newmarket.
Councilor Zink, Councilor Levy.
What I've learned tonight, and I hear constantly input from residents about the dilemma we face with apartment buildings and children and so forth, and what do we do to curb that, and is there some way, in fact, we could not only curb it, is there some way we could extract that expense? And what I didn't realize until this presentation tonight is that a town could, based on the negative financial impact of residential units, not approve them. That's news to me tonight.
That's correct.
I know,
And let me take the comment one step further. The developer needs to submit a fiscal impact study. Through our site plan review regulations, the planning board has authority to hire our own consultants or engineers or whoever it is to, if we're questioning that, we have the ability and to charge the developer for this, to have our own analysis done. But usually the developer's going out, they're getting a third party, there's, a few people in the state that do this and present this data. That is required.
just to follow up, is there a circumstance, and is there a circumstance where a developer could buy a piece of property and because it's zoned accordingly by right, build residential units if it did not have a positive impact?
In other areas of the town.
In this one?
In this area, we're saying any multifamily, 3 units or greater, you have to have a fiscal impact study. There's other
Okay.
areas in the town where they're zoned for that type of use, and you don't have to do an impact study.
Okay, that's a very important understanding, at least on my part tonight. I didn't realize that. Great, thanks.
Councilor Levy.
This presentation was very good. It didn't follow quite the way the packet was, so my questions might jump around a little bit, so I do have a few, if that's okay, and then just tell me to stop, and then maybe I can, the rezoning, you made a comment on page 76 about the special use permit. It said, key to ensuring any new development with residential components or providing waivers, et cetera, would not cause significant adverse environment or traffic impact, et cetera. And one of my questions was rezoning of Route 108, how will the adverse environmental or traffic impact actually be determined, and how subjective is that?
Well, it was mentioned that we have a site review process, and one of the requirements for housing units over a certain size is that the developer provide a traffic impact analysis that is prepared by a professional traffic engineer. And as Val alluded to, the planning board can hire its own reviewer of that, peer review if you want to call it that, so that the planning board will have a representative working for them to advise them on whether or not the data provided is accurate or reasonable. If, for instance, a project does show that there's going to be a major traffic impact, the planning board has the ability through the enabling legislation to negotiate for off-site improvements with the developer. And that might be that there'll be a signalized intersection, or that there'll be a widening of the roadway, or that there'll be additional lanes added to an existing roadway to accommodate that increased traffic impact.
What about
And that's-
environmental?
And the same thing with environmental. When we were doing the mill redevelopment, there were questions raised about noise. And we did have some information provided to us from the developer's engineer on the decibel levels that could be expected from, I think it was the air conditioning units, Val? And with that information, we were able to provide some stipulations on the approval that limited the decibel levels to a certain level so that it wouldn't be adversely impacting adjacent properties. It wouldn't have an adverse environmental impact. So that the data that we get through these impact studies is very critical to us and helpful to us as we come up with a plan with the developer that's going to be acceptable.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep going. Also, there was some issues or questions raised about water and sewer capacity. So, I don't want to combine too many things, but we have an economic development committee, which Val, obviously, you're on. Not to debate whether or not that is for large tracts of land or should include the downtown. I personally think an analysis should be done of the entire town, but that's just my personal opinion. We have water and sewer issues as we speak with respect to capacity. And we have some warrant articles going out. And I think we are actually under a mandate right now as far as how much we can build and whatnot because of the situation we're in. At least that's what I've been told. It just seems to me that doing this before we know whether, A, the warrant article is going to pass or not, whether or not we're going to have the capacity to do these things. And I thought it was up to 6 per 1 acre zoning, or is that not true?
6 units per acre.
Yeah, so it's up to 6 per acre, units per acre, correct? Okay, so it's not 4. 4 would just be if there's no business on the bottom floor.
6 units per acre for residential.
Yeah. So, Or 4 if it doesn't have a business, maybe I misread
It's
it.
no more than 4 units.
If you don't have a business on the bottom floor, correct?
Per structure, though.
It is-
That's the way I read it, but
But let's
But-
put it,
but
Yeah, let's
also,
make sure
excuse
it's
me.
I think an important point, and Val, we showed you the table. We said, we did a build-out analysis, and it says that potentially there could be 80 new units within this area. But that's assuming that all of the land can be developed, that there's no wetlands, there's no irregular shaped lots, that there's adequate parking. And really, that figure in reality is probably closer to, what, 20% of 80 units? And the impact of 20 housing units certainly is not going to exceed the capacity that we have available currently. And I think that, it's an overreaction to say, let's wait until we increase the capacity before we add additional units. At any point, we could have a proposal that comes through the door that adds an additional 20 units to the town.
well, I could be wrong,
And
but
there's capacity available for that amount.
maybe I'm
It's
wrong.
not like we're at the point where we have zero capacity available.
I thought-
You're right.
I thought we were under a moratorium, but I don't want,
We're not under
We're
a
not yet.
moratorium.
They threatened us with it.
That's an inaccurate
Um,
statement.
just a couple,
Just to fully answer your question, Mr. Levy, Council Levy, that's also part of site plan review, even if someone comes in with a business and wants to tear down a house and just do the business. I mean, they've got, all the department heads have to review and provide input on any proposal that comes before us.
And one of the questions we ask is the wastewater treatment supervisor, is there adequate capacity at this time to accommodate this development? If there's not, we're advised of that, and that could be a basis for the planning board to turn it down on that basis alone.
just a couple of other quickies. And you don't have to go over, I just thought I'd bring them up, so these are my concerns. On page 93, when you were talking about the planning board may waive road setbacks, et cetera, which I think Councilor Bentley brought up, it is in this document that it says the planning board may waive road setbacks, side and rear setbacks, and height. And some of the documentation that you gave us with respect to the, I have to find it now because it did jump around a little bit, and I apologize, but it won't take me long if you give me 1 second. There were a few things that were being changed in the zoning. For example, on page 98, it said special use permits, multifamily residential, mixed-use development with 3 or greater residential. So the way I read it was adding multifamily in 3 or greater residential units. Maybe I misread it, but the way I read what I brought up earlier was if there isn't some kind of a business on the bottom floor, you could have, if there wasn't, there could be 4 residential units. If there was a business, I'm saying if it was a 1-acre lot, just to make my point, you could have the business on the bottom floor and 6 multifamily. Is that incorrect?
No, that's actually correct, on mixed use, okay?
That's what I thought.
So anything on 108 with any residential would have to have a business on the first floor and a height restriction of 35 feet.
Got it. I just want to make sure I
Yeah.
understood it.
No, you understand exactly correct.
Yeah.
If it's multifamily, they can have no more than 4 units in a building and no more than 6 units per acre on the lot.
And just a couple of other things with ZBA, and that's pretty
All right,
much.
real quick.
On page 99, because I think there's so much here to absorb. It's very, very, and I think we need to sort of get it right. The planning board is going to be taking away the ZBA's responsibility, as I read it, as it pertains to fiscal impact. That was, I guess, under the ZBA control before, if you look at page 99. And then the planning board may also waive the requirement. So on one hand, it said the planning board will have a study, and a study will be made to see the impacts, et cetera. And then if you look at page 99, it says the planning board may waive the requirement that this study be submitted if in its discretion it determines that the study is not necessary. And then you have another footnote that says, the planning board may waive the requirement that the study be submitted if it's in discretion. It's not necessary. So, not being cynical, and this isn't personal at all to me. Boards change. No, it really isn't. But boards change, people come and go. I think that's giving an awful lot of latitude to, you're making it sound like we're going to get a physical impact, we're going to get the study, and then right under it, we can waive the study. And I didn't find that to be something I felt comfortable with. The way it was written, it seemed like it was making this argument that, yes, we're going to do this, and then, oh, by the way, we can waive it. And I'm sure there was no malice intended, but nonetheless, it's not personal to me. But nonetheless, it's basically cutting off the legs of the study, the physical impact and all that, if it's desired or not deemed necessary by a particular planning board. And I personally don't feel comfortable with that, but that's pretty much where I am.
Have you already spoken? Mm-hmm. All right. One thing I just want to get off my chest, and then a couple questions. So we can have a developer do this feasibility study, and then if we don't like the responses, we can go and do our own and charge the developer.
Correct. If there is a reason for the planning board to question a report that's submitted by the developer, we have the ability within our regulations to, we do this all the time with site plan review, where we hire our own engineer. Like the mill project, we had Severino was the engineer for the town, Underwood, sorry. And so they were basically assisting through site plan review on behalf of the town at the expense of the developer. That's a perfect example.
I just don't know if I'm, nothing to me, if I were a developer, and I'm not, but if I were, if I was coming in and thinking, okay, I can
It's
get,
consistent with,
It's
if you
in
go,
the
if you do business in any towns, yeah.
I'm not, just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean I think it's right.
authorized.
So it's just my personal, I'm just getting off my chest, I'm not saying we're going to change it, it's just my personal opinion. So I know we've done, we said that there's going to be site-by-site impact on services, review on whatever there's a feasibility review. Have we even done back-of-the-envelope math on, I don't want to say worst-case scenario, but biggest draw on services, least increased revenue to the town of changing the zoning, what that impact would be? Is that even possible to do?
So many different scenarios, especially
I
when
mean
you're
worst.
dealing
I
with
mean worst case
mixed-use
scenario
versus-
is what I'm saying. Like the lowest revenue, highest drawn services, what the impact would be.
It can be very subjective depending upon the way they
Right.
make the study.
Can I just?
You could hire 5 different consultants,
And it'll
and
be 5 different
they'd
answers?
charge you $10,000 each one to do this.
And it'll be 5 different
And you get
answers.
5 different things.
Okay.
Economic Development Committee, the report that John did, right? That was a feasibility fiscal analysis for one project. I don't know what the actual cost of that was, but think about doing that on every single 37 lots.
I mean, mathematically, there's only a finite amount of combinations and permutations of the land. There has to be some number out there that actually is the worst case scenario.
I agree.
I don't know how much, maybe it would cost us too much to get the answer, but somewhere there is the worst case scenario for drawn revenue, drawn services and revenue to the town.
I can tell you the opposite, me.
Well, yeah, then there's the best case scenario. But I mean, for,
I know,
if this zoning changes.
Just make a
yeah.
little joke.
The Moody Point is, you guys, they hardly draw on services.
I think one student.
One's kid, yeah. And it's not a population that's old enough that's drawing a lot on the ambulance services or anything. That aside,
Thank God.
well, conceptual design, you mentioned that conceptual designs had come to the planning board that you just were not able to move forward with?
Correct.
Based on the zoning. I'm wondering if you could give us, and this is my last question, you can give us some ideas of, like, a sampling of what those were, but just so we could see what actually was coming before you.
Sure.
And then what you think, any potential developments that might be in the chute quickly, if we did change this zoning.
Would you object to, you have developers in the audience, would you object to any of them speaking?
Would any counselor have an issue with this?
No.
All right.
Mr. Cheney?
What's the question?
Do they want to speak, I guess?
Here comes the boss.
They're like, no, thanks.
The question is, present to us a conceptual plan that has been considered recently that could benefit from this proposal.
Yeah, I just want to know some sampling of, like, if you've had conceptual plans that cannot meet the current zoning, but would meet this one? Like, what have they been?
Walter Cheney, I own the two buildings that are pictured up there. I did, I guess, 2 years ago, propose a mixed-use building here. It was immediately terminated at the zoning board because a mixed use was not allowed in this area. Primary problem, lots are too small. Highest and best use, after I looked at it, was determined to be exactly what it is. By the time you take the building, buy the lot, combine them, tear down the buildings, and then take all the regulations, setbacks, so on, you couldn't build a big enough retail box that would then support itself and supply the parking and all the other requirements that were involved. Taking that same box, looking at a second story, I looked at the feasibility of office space on that second story. I don't care what town you go in, it could be Boston, you're gonna find second story office space vacant all the time. Even in the primest locations, downtown Portsmouth, you will see rental signs all over the place. Why it doesn't work, I don't know. You can go to a mall, and second-story stores are just as active as the first floor. I don't know how or why that works, but at the end of the day, we could not make a retail, commercial building work on the lots combined. Could we potentially get a dentist to move into one of these, or potentially get an attorney? Sure, but what's that going to do for the overall impact of the tax base? Not much. That house is going to get the same taxes whether the dentist is in there or whoever. So, unfortunately, due to the, you know, the dynamics of the zoning, we could not feasibly make the project work without a residential aspect. Not only going to a bank, went to numerous banks and said, hey, what do you think about this? And they basically were like, we wouldn't touch it. So,
What was it that you were suggesting there? I know mixed use, but did you have like any sort of conceptual, like number of residents?
yeah, I
or-
provided, I can't, it was like a 7,000 square foot, almost like a train depot type building. It had outdoor seating or retail space for merchandise. We met all the parking requirements. One of the problems was with 25-foot side setbacks, the whole lot's only 90 feet wide thereabouts. So I had, you know, less than 50 feet to work with internal to make parking in the building. So, you know, trying to put a dumpster pad in there, that was in the side setback, that couldn't get moved forward. So there's a lot of issues, primarily because of the size of the properties. You need to accumulate multiple lots under the B1 zone to make it economically feasible, or big enough to make any kind of sizable commercial space. And then acquiring them, you're still going to pay a premium as the value of the house, to which you're going to tear down. And you know what I mean? It just gets, it gets too costly.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, just real quick, what were you trying to put up there, though? How many residences would have been there?
It would have been, there was 6 residential units. There's
And
3
commercial at
currently
the
there
first
now.
floor.
And then it was about 7,000 square feet of new retail space.
Okay, thanks. Councilor Levin.
So just for my own edification, if you had 6,000 or 7,000 square foot of retail space on the bottom floor, right, which you theoretically could do in a B1 zone, correct? That would bring the town X amount of tax revenue, correct? Predicated on the value of the building and what kind of retail you're doing, whether it's retail or whether it's, with 7,000 square feet, you could probably put quite a few offices in there, a couple of 3, like if it was professional, possibly?
Yeah.
Like a lawyer's office or a real estate office, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's play it the other way. You've got the bottom floor with those same, and that would bring in X amount of tax dollars, okay? We could, I don't know what the calculation is, but I guess it would be based on the quality of the building and what you're putting in there. Now, if you flip it and we do what we're talking about here potentially,
you'd have that same theoretical 7,000 square foot or 6,000 square foot building on the bottom, right? And then up above, you could have up to 6 multifamily or rental units, correct? Condos,
Well,
multifamily,
under the
whatever.
new, it actually decreases, because I don't have an acre, I'm under an acre.
If it was an acre,
So-
just to play it,
Yeah.
because before it was about 6. So what I'm trying to get at is the value of the building is really where I'm going. And so, just pretend it was an acre, because some of these are an acre,
Sure.
okay? So if you had 3 or 4 businesses on that 6 or 7,000 square foot building on the bottom floor, not to say you couldn't have somebody upstairs, but let's just say, like you said, nobody wants to go upstairs.
Yep.
And now you've got 6 rentals upstairs, or condos, or whatever. What's the value of the building, as far as the difference, and the tax revenue coming into the town? That's one calculation that, would be worth knowing. And then, how do you deal with the parking? If you had what you were looking for, you had gotten a variance before, right? You have this fairly small acreage. You could have had 6 rentals, so I'm just saying those 6 people theoretically are going to need a place to park if they have a car. And then the businesses are going to need a place for people to come and go and park, right? If you're a real estate broker or attorney or dentist office, whatever, they're going to have patients coming in or clients. So I guess what I'm getting at is the value, realizing you didn't do anything, you kept it the way it is, correct?
Yes.
What is there, just so I know exactly now, how many?
It's a single-family house and a duplex, so there's technically 3 units on the site now.
Okay, 3 units that are,
3 residential units.
and they're being rented, I'm guessing?
Well, I am running my office out of one, the
Okay,
other 2 are rented,
so one's a
yes.
business, okay. So, anyway, that's the calculation. The parking. Do we have room in this case, to accommodate this M2 change? And what is the value of what we're getting for tax revenue now versus what we would be getting if we implemented the new zoning? I mean, that's really what this boils down to, and I'm just bringing it up because at the end of the day, this is an equation that has to be considered if we're going to do something like this. And we're talking about parking issues, and I'm just curious, if we said this is in now, this, what we're talking about, this is now there, what potentially could go on that lot? Just what's there? This would not affect Mr. Cheney at all? If this change was in place right now, Diane?
How many acres between your 2 lots, right? How many acres between the 2?
It's .91 and some change. With the
5
2
acres.
lots combined, individually, they're even,
Smaller than
obviously.
that.
One's, I think,
So you could do a commercial with 5 units?
yes.
Under the new zoning?
And you could do larger commercial.
And just so that you know, the proposal that I did put forth met all of the parking requirements based on 1 parking space per 200 square feet, or whatever it was for the existing retail, as well as 2 units, 2 parking spaces for the residential units upstairs. So parking
Was not the issue.
was not an issue at all.
And you couldn't get a variance because,
The residential aspect was not allowed in the B1 zone. So that was the first variance heard, and they denied it. The second variance would have been having the dumpster pad in the side setback, which we never got to that point, because at that point it was,
and just my last thing, and just so, I think it's a decent, thank you for coming, by the way, and explaining this, because it's an education for me.
Sure.
If you put up this 6,000 or 7,000 square foot retail place and rented it out to 3 or 4 entities, that doesn't bring you the revenue at the end of the day that you can get out of renting 3 units or having 2 units in your office.
not even close.
Okay.
Yeah, these, due to their, age and size, they don't make any money. They might break even due to, the current cost of tax and everything else.
These don't make any money.
Oh, gee, no.
Well, that was my question. My
Oh.
question was, if you built in a B1 zone,
Yeah.
a 6,000 or 7,000 square foot building,
Correct.
a brand-new building, and you rented it out to 3 or 4 different types of, professional offices or whatever you want to put in there for a B1 zone,
Sure.
why wouldn't that bring you more revenue than you're getting now?
Well,
Why
because
did
the
you need-
overall cost to get there, by the time you go through the process of all the engineering, all the site work, the building, and then going through the, actual acquiring of the lots. Granted, I own the lots, but it'd be a whole new entity, so technically, the lot costs need to be put into the overall value of the project. And so taking the individual house at basically assessed values is put into the mix. It's not like those houses would be free of charge to the project. You have to add that cost in. So when it's all said and done, and the fact that unfortunately, as nice as Newmarket is, you can't get $25 or $30 a square foot. You're getting 10, you're getting 12. You might get 15. I don't know what they might be getting at the mills, but you can't get enough square footage dollar at the end of the day, after going through everything you do to put up the building, to make the numbers work. It just doesn't work.
That's right.
Is it possible to get the conceptual drawing that you've done on this, the depot?
Yeah, no, I.
Just for, I mean, just,
Yeah, I agree.
we see what this looks like now. It'd just be interesting to see what the depot looks like.
I can get some copies.
Councilor Zink?
And I do development too, so I get it. And one way to think about it is the development of the retail environment isn't worth it by the time you take it down and build it up. And the only way this thing can work is if there's residential stuff on top of it. That's how you're gonna.
Correct, because I can't get enough square footage on the
Right.
bottom.
Right,
You have to do something with up top.
right.
And I just know too many people that have tried to utilize, commercial office space on a second floor, and they struggle year after year keeping it full.
And I think one way to think about it is from a development standpoint, is anything that is allowed on the second floor that is residential will provide increased value to the property. The property will be assessed higher, and the town will receive more taxes from it.
As well as benefits to the businesses that obviously are going in below.
Thanks.
Other questions of Mr. Cheney, or of the planning
The only,
board?
the only last thing I'd say with respect to this is because we have a store, we had our store on State Street in Portsmouth, and I think the two, 132 and 136, give or take, was about 7,000 square feet for the two. Don't hold me to it, I lived there my whole life, but I don't remember. And we had 3 apartments upstairs, where we lived, and maybe this is a good idea. I don't have enough information right now, honestly, to be able to truly evaluate it. I do think the densities might be a little rich, a little higher than for that size, but that's just a first thought, so, anyway.
Other?
Yeah, one quick question. This is just for, I guess, Val or Diane. Phil asked a question, I'm sort of going to try to rephrase it, about maybe the worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
If I rephrase it, I'm always looking for something positive in town, and that's sometimes easy to put down on paper, but what about the unintended consequences that we're not seeing, that you guys must have looked into that, as, doing a project like this?
Such as
I'm asking you, I mean,
unintended consequences.
there's always, and this is not a trick question, I think it's a fair and honest,
No,
you're always looking at
another
something
one.
positive, but there's something down the road that you overlook or you're not seeing, and
There could be an unintended, this is the backside of the parking lot. It's not this portion, it's the construction site, if you will, is not the area that's supporting the parking for the mill redevelopment. So this is a perfect spot for urban infill. So I would think, I mean, ideally, it's really significantly geared to mixed use, because it's a perfect transition from the downtown over to Spring Street. This is all the end of Spring Street, which is all residential. So it's easy to conceptualize a 35-foot building there that would have mixed use in it. It's not fronting on 108. So what is the likelihood that they take this space, and I'd have to look at the, you know, the acreage, and they put in what we have across the street, which are maybe 4 units in each little building. And so they expand the Spring Street neighborhood, and it's just all residential. And then worst case scenario is they make the units big enough that they're really, you know, appealing to a family. I mean, it's hard to talk about this, right, because we're not supposed to discriminate. But from a cost perspective, if you had larger type condos or multifamily rental buildings right in town or anywhere in town, you know, what's the cost associated with that? So I think that would be, I'm not saying, I don't want to say it as an unintended consequence, because that would be if they could do it by zoning. But it's really not the highest and best use for that location or that property. It's almost like, I mean, you've been here for generations. We've lost the urban feel of the old days, which is where we had the little tiny building over to the right was a market, and the people lived above it. Across the street, there was another market, and the people lived above it. There were lots of these around town, or that someone had a barber shop and the building was torn down, and then it became a blacksmith shop and lived above it. So the reason we've concentrated on this expansion of what we currently, our area, which is currently M2, we're trying to grow that area. It's a very successful area for this town. I think the better question to ask would be, in the M2 zone now, do those properties cost our town money, or are we making money? I think that's the better question to ask of the assessor. Because we have an M2 zone, and we have a lot of building and a lot of mixed use and a lot of residential in that zone.
Can we get those numbers, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Levy.
Just real quick. There were a couple of sections, I'll try to be real quick. There were a couple of sections moved. Now you got me laughing. Hold on now. See, now I won't be quick.
I was wondering if he was losing that love.
Can't make me laugh. There was some areas on page 100, you said moved from section 5.8C, 1 and 2. Then you moved an entire section to chapter 6, site review regulations, to a new section, 3.22, with the exception of paragraph 5, drive-through facilities. So, you know, a lot of this has been, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of moving parts that I would like to see broken out so we could really see what's happening. And no, I'm not saying, give me those looks. I'd just like to see, you know, where those sections that you're moving, what's in those sections now, and was there any?
We're just taking the whole section, we're moving it from the zoning ordinance, we're putting it into the site review regulations.
Okay.
We've already done.
Which we've already done, which we have, you know, under the RSAs, we can do that.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it implied that this was happening now.
So in other words, we still have those standards, they're just not, they're design standards, they really shouldn't be in a zoning ordinance, because it's
Okay.
really, design requires a certain amount of discretion, and it was felt that it would be more appropriate in the site review regulations, which the planning board has jurisdiction.
So could we just get what the?
Yes.
And
They're
is,
the
Well,
same
no,
standards,
yes,
we've
we'll
just
get that.
moved them.
Is there any reason the ZBA was taken out of the mix and those responsibilities were given to the planning board? Could you explain that, please?
One is that was one of the goals of the zoning board.
So the ZBA wanted that?
Yes. And it's very difficult to, again, the zoning board is very constrained by the 5 criteria. So the frustration was you have projects come before you and you can't grant the variance because the applicant just cannot meet the criteria for granting. And with the focus that we're trying to get business development going, but you can't grant the variances, you're not going to get business development moving. But additionally to that, it's very burdensome on a developer to have to deal with 2 boards, as opposed to dealing with a project and going forward with 1 board to do the project. And that's the question. Is the zoning board involved with planning, or is the town philosophy to have the planning board responsible for the development of the town, the planning of the town? And that's a philosophical question, and that's going to be for the council to decide. But if we did not have the support of the zoning board, we wouldn't have been here.
Steve, 2 things. One, we can, when we discuss this again as a council, we don't have to accept every change they've made to this, right? We can amend the document to be what we want to accept. Okay. The other thing, and I've heard a lot in my time on the council about this, that apartments don't draw in as much revenue, and apartments do. Can we actually see what numbers, like apartments versus any other sort of property, like for taxes, like what the differential is? Because I keep hearing it said as though it's this universal truth that apartments draw in less tax revenue than.
I think you want to look at
they impact us
non-single families.
Yeah.
I think it's true.
But I would like to see the numbers. Everyone just assumes it's true, but I've never seen the numbers, and I'd like to see what the numbers are.
Can you phrase that one, say that?
So I've heard that apartments draw more on their services and don't put as much revenue into the town as other forms of buildings. So I've heard that said a ton.
Like a condo or a home or something.
And I've never actually
There's no
seen.
land. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's true, maybe, but I've never seen the numbers.
nice
I've
to
only heard
quantify
people
it.
say it's true.
There's no land.
So, any last questions for the planner or the planning board chair?
And he's got something to.
I was going to explain the procedure from here, since there's some public and the council rules. If the ordinance is to be introduced, the first reading would be February 6th. No action at the first meeting, it's just the reading. There is another workshop in between. If the council wants to have another workshop session on this, we can do it in between. The public hearing on the ordinance, because by law we need to have a public hearing, would be on March 6th. That's your March business meeting date, which at the same time you could have the second reading and the vote that evening, or if you got a lot of input for the public hearing, hold it over for a third reading, which would be the April 6th meeting. So just so that you know, that's the procedure. We're not talking that this is going to be voted on in the next 2 weeks. Action wouldn't be happening until March 6th at the earliest, unless you suspend the rules. But you have to have a public hearing.
I think, am I correct, one of the logistical issues with that, Steve, is the fact that if it were held over until April, you would have new counselors in on the final, without the history of.
You're correct. One
Right.
thing we don't have in our rules that a lot of councils have is an expiration date for ordinances. So if you don't act upon certain ordinances by date certain,
Yeah.
everything's taken off the table and you start again, which is probably a good idea to have on the table. But yes, you'd probably have to educate new councils if there's new councils elected. So.
Councilor Carmichael, you wanted to say one last thing?
Yes, as the town council rep to the planning board, I just want to commend Val and Diane and the subcommittee and all the members of the planning board. I've had almost a full year now, and and it's been a real learning experience for me. And I commend you for all the hours you're putting in on these subcommittees, and it's just incredible the work these people do. And it's been a great experience for me, and I know what you've done in a year and a half you've been working on this and trying to get it through. And it took me 2 or 3 meetings to get a lot of questions answered. So I can see how it's hard for the rest of the council to sit here tonight and say, oh yeah, we're going to take a vote. No, I wasn't concerned about any vote tonight, because I think it takes a couple times in front of us, because you're going to have a lot more questions after this too. But thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you
That's
very
all I
much.
need to
Appreciate
say.
your time. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Cheney, for speaking as well.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, and this may be the first meeting in a long time that we're going to go past 10 o'clock.
We are, Matt?
No.
Matt Angel,
As everybody clears
Town of
up.
Newmarket electric rate presentation.
Just to remind the council, if it gets to 10 o'clock, a 2/3 vote is necessary to go past 10 o'clock.
2/3. Man, we,
You need 5 of you.
before you came here, we had a lot of meetings going past.
I know, but
Yeah.
these are the rules you've adopted, just to keep you guys
Moving.
focused and we're moving.
All right, Matt, what do you got?
All right. Give me a second.
You're burning daylight, Matt.
I am, and I'm going to try to be brief.
Terse and laconic.
Could someone get, I guess everyone home can see it.
I can get it.
We've got it on our computers, just so you know, we got the whole PowerPoint.
All we have is, yeah. God forbid the press doesn't see this.
Good evening, Town Council. People at home who don't know me, my name is Matt Angel. I'm the Interim Finance Director. And this presentation just really gives a 60,000 viewpoint or flyover of just the electric rates of what we're currently paying for the town. So let's just jump right into this. I first want to give you just a quick overview. Right now, we're contracted with NextEra Energy Services LLC. We just call it NextEra, and they sell us power. However, PSNH, we have to pay them a transmission fee to send that power to us. We have a total of 37 accounts. 35 of those are being provided. The power is being provided by NextEra. And if you look at the average monthly usage for the town, we use over 124,000 kilowatt hours per month. Okay. Now, I want to kind of give you a quick summary of the contracts that are affected here. The first one was entered into in September of 2011. In that contract, we're paying just under 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and those are for the high usage accounts. Those would be the street lights, water pump stations, police station, library, and so on. The next contract was January 25th of 2011. And that one there is at 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour. And these are more the medium to smaller accounts, and those include a storage shed, the Wadley Falls water pump station, some dam gates, and other small accounts. Okay, and then there's a third contract. And what this third contract did was it really extended the first 2 contracts. And beginning in December, the town's now going to pay about 7 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, I did an analysis, and what I did is I selected a 10-month period in that analysis. And that 10-month is really a complete period where it includes every single account, and there's some sort of usage in those accounts. And when you compare the NextEra rates against PSNH, we save just under $10,000. However, I recently was approached by the school district, and they want to go out to bid with the town. And their current agreement is month to month, and so it really makes coordinating purchasing electric with the school department feasible at this point. Now, what I did is I sat down with the school district's provider just to make sure that they would extend the same rates to us. So when I did my analysis, they said yes. Whatever the school was charged, the town would be charged as well. However, they also said that because streetlights are used during off-peak hours, they would have charged us a lower rate. Now, if you look at the original contract, that's at almost 7.5 cents, where the smaller accounts are at 7.2 cents per kilowatt hour. So, if we had gone with the school's provider, we would have saved an additional $16,993 over the same month period. Now, I just want to kind of bump out of my slideshow here for a second.
Can you just real quick repeat that? If we had what? If we had used
If we had used
yeah.
the school's provider, we would have saved almost $17,000 more dollars
Than the current contract.
than the current contract.
Got it.
So if you want to compare it to PSNH,
Got it.
it's $26,000.
Got it.
That, on the town side, right, the savings?
Well, right now, we're saving $10,000 over PSNH.
Okay, but I'm just,
Had we gone with the school district, we would have saved an additional $17,000. So the school's paying lower rates than the town, and they're actually using less power than us.
By a lot.
Okay?
And excuse me, and have been that?
And have been.
So that this provider is not a new provider?
It's not, it's my understanding that at one time, the town and the school had the same provider, and we had branched off from them. Okay? Oops, sorry about that. Now, I just want to quickly go over my spreadsheet. I don't want to go into great numbers here, but I want to point out that the accounts that are highlighted in yellow, those are the accounts that are at the higher rate as compared to everything else. Okay? And just so that you know, going forward, this is the order from the PUC. This order authorizes PSNH to charge $9.5 cents per kilowatt hour to its customers beginning in the beginning of January. And our current rate is at 7 cents, or just over 7 cents. Okay? So, let me go back to my presentation. Going forward, what I'd like to do is,
Matt, why are you doing, is the school paying like $6.50?
they're paying, the last time I looked, it was just over 6 cents per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
Okay. Now, the reason for all of this is it is good business practice to look at your contracts to see if they fit your current needs. And I want to ask the town council to give the town administrator authority to either break the current contract, renegotiate the contract, and go out to bid with the school district, because we may find that the current agreement meets our situation or it does not. But if you look at the past results, if we had gone with the school, we could have saved additional funds. Okay? And of course, anything that we do will be reaffirmed by the town council. Okay? Questions?
Questions, councilors? Councilor Levy.
Matt, I'm just curious, this last contract, I think you said was signed, was it May 24th, 2012?
Yes.
Do you know why because I didn't know about it, and I don't think the council was apprised. Do you know why this didn't come to the council?
I shut that off.
No, I don't.
I mean, it's in excess of 6 figures, is it not? Yearly?
Arguably, it is. Yes.
So I guess I would ask the town administrator, please explain.
I was reviewing the purchasing policy that's in place currently. Well, we don't know if we have record if the purchasing policy of 2009 was ever adopted, but there's a purchasing policy in place that does not limit the authority of the town administrator to expend funds. For example, if it was budgeted for $20,000 to purchase a police cruiser, the town administrator, after receiving bids, could sign that agreement without having to come back to the council. There's nothing in the procedure that, does that happen?
You said if
Oh,
received
wait,
bid.
can I finish?
Sorry.
That's not what we currently do. As you know, I've been bringing a number of purchases to the council, assuming out of good practice that there's a limit that the town administrator should have authority over before bringing it to the council for authority. There is nothing, yes, if the town administrator gets 3 bids and follows the policy and the procedures, they're allowed to do that. The council never put in a ceiling for council review. That was, as I mentioned in my report earlier, that's one of the things I'll be proposing is a ceiling for the town administrator. The other thing that I would have to do more research on would be entering into multi-year agreements. It doesn't look like we entered into any multi-year agreements with these electrical purchases. But again, multi-year agreements need to be approved by the town council, not by the town administrator alone. However, the purchasing policy currently has an exemption for utilities. Again, I saw this probably at 4 o'clock, Matt and I were discussing it, it came forward. I wouldn't do that if it was such a large multi-year agreement, even for utilities. It's something that the council should be aware of that's being out there. So I think that's the reasoning there. It's not uncommon for utilities to be exempt because of the fact that it's just a common purchase. But I think if any time you'd have something new or out of the ordinary, you'd probably bring it to the council for the review.
Other questions?
I just think the issue going forward, I think what you folks are looking for is the approval to go ahead and see if you can renegotiate it. And if you can renegotiate, you'd bring that back to us. And if there was a penalty associated with renegotiating, you would bring that back to us too. So at least from the question I'm hearing is, I certainly have this support the issue of trying to see if we can get a better deal. You know, if there's nothing, I do it all the time at work, so.
Matt, a question, since the school's getting 6 cents, we're paying, if we combine, are we able to get a better deal in quantity or bulk?
Yes.
That's what I want to find out.
Yeah. And I guess my fault, why didn't we work together to do this?
Because we don't work together on anything.
That's right.
So, real quick, I know the town administrator has something, but so if we would get bulk by going with the school, why in the world do we have 37 separate accounts? Why don't we have one that we could get some sort of bulk discount?
I think that is dictated by PSNH. The 37 accounts is the meter that's on the building.
But we're not going through PSNH.
PSNH is the transmission.
No matter what,
Right.
they're the, okay.
PSNH doesn't make their money off the making of the electricity. They make the money off of the transmission of the electricity.
And what's interesting to note as well, if you ask me for a bill from NextEra, I have none. It's
PSNH.
embedded into the PSNH bill.
So, my opinion is, one, there's, specifically to this, I am absolutely for us getting the lowest rate possible, and with us going with the school. Whatever loopholes are somehow in the purchasing policy that would allow you, no offense,
No.
to get into a multi-year, multi-$100,000 contract, I think that's probably something that and I know that's something that the council should have authority to handle, and would like to see that. I mean, I don't know how the other councilors feel, but for me, I'd like to see that loophole closed.
I wouldn't have come forward with with something if I didn't think it wasn't proper. As for discussions about bulk buying, utilities are one of the areas that it's perfect sense for the town and the school to bulk buy. Electricity and fuel. Because fuel, you get a better rate if you buy in bulk. So I think those are the two that we really need to look at. We hear about the grand ideas for the efficiencies for the combining of the two. These are the things that are really doable things that we can do to try to solve that, and work with the school to do that. And hopefully we can move forward with that.
So just so I understand what you're going to do, you're going to go to our current provider, and you're going to ask them if they will
meet the price that we're getting currently,
Until such time, until they're in the
Okay.
contract.
or if they can't, you're going to find out if you can break the contract and if there's a penalty.
Mhm.
And I think the third thing you should do, obviously, is figure out if we did, combined with the school, what the savings would be
Absolutely.
between if we broke the contract,
Mhm.
so we know all the whole picture.
And I think we need to integrate the night rates too, that you mentioned, Matt, because I know that in your analysis here, you didn't have the
No.
night rates. So I
Correct.
think it would be, just to get the full spectrum of what the savings should be.
Yep.
I mean, the contract was signed a couple of days before Steve took over, so just remind the council of that.
And some of the things that Matt brought up, are pretty common. Night rates are a common thing. That's a very common thing when it comes to streetlights. Streetlights are usually on a different pricing schedule than all your other lights because of that. Versus usually wastewater plants. That's why I think I mentioned once, do we save, I asked if we save money with any updates to the wastewater plant. Because that's a high electricity user, usually. So, those are the kind of things that should be looked at.
Any other comments from the council?
Good job.
Yeah, thank you, Matt and Steve, for finding this. Excellent job. Next item on the agenda is new business. Councilors. Councilor
I
Carmichael.
don't know if this is new business, because I mentioned it before, but at the crossings down here again, I saw somebody almost get hit last week again, right, going to the restaurant down at the bottom of the hill. Poppers. And it was raining out, and it was dark, and I was on the curb, and I yelled at the guy, and he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't see them. There were people in front of me." And is there anything we can do? Dover, has just come up with something. I was
Yep.
reading in the paper the other day with some kind of lights. And is there some way, I know you said the state doesn't have much money, we don't have a lot of money, but where it's a crossing, especially for the development, for the people, for his customers, for the restaurants, for the apartments, I would think that he might be able to help us out with that if there's a cost situated with putting some kind of lights, some more fixtures up there.
Well, I'm
Because
not.
these people have to cross that every day.
Well, I'm not sure about going to the developer. I
Yeah.
am very familiar with the new system they have in Dover, the crosswalk. I'm actually trying to see how much that costs. For those who aren't aware, it's the normal pedestrian diamond sign with somebody walking across, but flashing lights around it. Durham has one, in the area of the A-lot over to the field house. I think it's a good way, for even if it's temporarily, that we can draw attention to it. I'm going to get a cost on that, because I think it's probably the least expensive. The next would be moving streetlights to aim it in that area, but I don't think the way you drive over, because, you're going to be missing that viewpoint anyways if you drive one way or the other. I think, I agree, I've had that situation a few times, I've heard it from other counselors. So I am looking at that, and the signs are the number one thing I'm going to look at.
Councilor Zank.
I find the same thing, by the way, headed south down by the bean,
Yep.
because there's because a car parks right in front of their entrance, and, yeah, and so when people walk out into the crosswalk, they're already
In the
there.
street.
Right.
They're already in the street. Something is, I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you brought it up. It's,
There's a couple of real dangers.
yeah, there's,
Somebody's gonna get hurt.
somebody is gonna get hurt. Yeah.
Anything else, councilors? We are going to have to go into a brief non-public to discuss the minutes that we did not approve. So I will entertain a motion.
Motion to go non-public.
We didn't approve.
The non-public minutes that Councilor Vice Chair Bentley had some questions
Making us
on.
do this.
Well, I didn't know it had to be tonight, it doesn't need to be
Let me get it over. So there's a motion to go into non-public.
Second.
Motion to second. In discussion? Mr. Administrator, the vote?
Counsel Wright?
Aye.
Counsel Levy?
All right.
I meant to say thank you when I said aye.
Council Zink, Council Carmichael, Council Bentley, Council
Motion passed 7-0. At 9:57, we're non-public. Council Levy, can you let us know when we're on?